Good evening, everyone. The Durham Public Schools Board of Education work session for February 9th, 2026 is now in session. At this time, we want to extend a warm welcome to everyone who is joining us this evening. The purpose of this meeting is to inform our parents, staff, and constituents about the work aligned with our mission to embrace, educate, and empower every student to innovate, serve, and lead. The interpreters for tonight are Consuelo Nordan and Karen Reyes. Thank you for taking the time to join us. I'd also like to introduce our Superintendent Student Advisory Representative, welcoming Lasagna Argueta from City of Medicine Academy. She is an 11th grader, and we are so thankful to have her here. She is proud to be able to complete healthcare courses early in high school to prepare for her becoming a CNA and pharmacy technician next year as a graduating senior, and also will earn her associate's degree upon graduation. And she was even telling me how her career goal is actually to be an OBGYN surgeon. So we are so proud of her and knowing that she is ready for her future. Welcome.
Thank you for having me this afternoon. I really appreciate and to have this opportunity to be here as a representative.
Thank you so much. We are proud of you. All right. I think we'll begin with a moment of silence. A moment of silence recognizing that this is a celebratory month, a Black History Month that we are in. Have so many local heroes, national heroes to celebrate, to remember. And I'm going to read a poem that I found that I love by Nikki Giovanni, who just passed in 2024. It's called Black History Month. If Black History Month is not viable, then wind does not carry the seeds and drop them on fertile ground. Rain does not dampen the land and encourage the seeds to root. Sun does not warm the earth and kiss the seedlings and tell them plain, you're as good as anybody else. You've got a place here too. So as we begin this evening, let's celebrate all that is Black History Month all year round in Durham Public Schools. Thank you very much. That brings us to our agenda review and approval. Colleagues, any changes noted? Ms. Harold Goff.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to add the policy committee update for information only before CTE month proclamation.
Second. That'd be moved by Ms. Harold Goff and seconded by Ms. Carter Otten that we add an information item, an update from the policy committee update right before academic services number 4. Any further discussion? Any other changes needed this evening? If not, all in favor? We'll do a roll call vote because Ms. Who's online? Let's see. We'll start with Ms. Rogers.
Millicent Rogers, and I vote aye.
Thank you. Mr. Tab.
Mr. Tab, I vote aye.
Ms. Harold Goff.
Aye.
Ms. Chavez.
Aye.
Carter Otten. Aye. And I'm Natalie Byer. I vote aye as well. It passes unanimously. Can we have a motion on the entire agenda?
Move approval of the agenda as amended.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Carter Otten and seconded by Mr. Tab that we approve the agenda as amended. Any further discussion? Ms. Rogers.
Millicent Rogers, and I vote aye.
Mr. Tab.
Mr. Tab, I vote aye.
Joy Harold Goff, aye.
Aye. And I vote aye.
Aye. Vote aye as well. It passes unanimously. That brings us to the Board of Education meeting minutes from January 15th, 2026.
I was going to move approval, but I just noticed one issue. Could we correct, please, at the header of the minutes, it says 2025 instead of 2026. So I would move approval of the meeting minutes from January 15, 2026, with that one change.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Carter Otten and seconded by Ms. Harold Goff that we approve the minutes with a small amendment to the date. Any other discussion? If not, we'll start with Ms. Rogers.
Millicent Rogers, and I vote aye.
Mr. Tab, I vote aye.
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 Aye. It passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Smith, for those thoughtful and complete minutes. That brings us to item E, general public comment. We have two speakers this evening. A quick review of the rules. First, please state your name. If speaking for an organization, please state your name and the name of the organization. Second, speakers are asked to present their comments in a specified time of 3 minutes. When the yellow light comes on, you'll have 1 minute left to start winding up your remarks. When the red light comes on, it will beep, which indicates that your time is complete. Complaints about named staff, students, or parents should not be voiced in open session. However, we are very interested in hearing your concerns with regard to public education, safety of students, or to the operation of the school system. Finally, board members will listen carefully and consider the comments, but we do not engage in a discussion with speakers. Our first speaker is Katie McGonnell.
There are several of you who are not running again for your seat, and I don't want this to be your legacy. Here's remediation at Little River. This is not my classroom because my classroom clearly didn't inspire the board to change or make this better. Staple gun to the wall. It clearly states in the SNME report that any wallpaper that is peeling from the laminate should be removed. Here you can see a bubble where everything's stapled on the side. All that is going to do when Mother Nature turns her temperatures up is create, according growth. I'm just going to call it what it is, mold. This classroom, these photos were taken on January 15th, by the way. This is one of the classrooms that had a 23,000 spore count in September. Along the other side, because I wasn't going to pay $17 to blow this picture up, it's stapled to the wall. We didn't even remove the growth before we stapled it. It's all right there. Room B6. Here's another example of DPS's handiwork. More stapled gun peeling laminate, not in my classroom, on B Hall. Brand new mold on A Hall, right above the boys' bathroom, outside the cafeteria. That makes everybody want to get a slice of pizza on Friday, doesn't it? Yeah. Ceiling tiles on A Hall. Building Services has said for the last 2 years, this is dirt. Clearly, after our IAQ done this year, we've realized that it's not dirt, it's mold. We had catastrophic circumstances at Little River this year. You guys can't prevent that. You cannot. But we could have a catastrophic reaction. And we have not had that. Today, I had to leave work right at the bell because in my classroom, my face was flushed and I had a rash. My classroom has not given me a rash in months. As I walked out, Dr. Hogan said, "Why the long face, Miss Mack?" I'm sorry, he actually said Miss McConnell. He doesn't call me Miss Mack. And I said, "Well," and he's like, "I see. It's not okay. And it shouldn't be your legacy, ladies. Hold these people accountable." Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McGonnell. Next speaker is Rob Fields.
Good evening. My name is Rob Fields. I'm a grandparent of 3 DPS students, soon to be 4. Three things I want to address. First, I have connections from Wake Forest. I got a degree from Wake Forest. I've got family connections with Wake Forest, and I want to thank the district for the statement that you put out about Rodney Rogers. I watched him play. He was a dream to watch play. It was so much fun. After he finished playing, the way he dealt with adversity in his life is a model when I wish all of us would have the strength that he had, the inner strength to deal with adversity the way he dealt with it. And appreciate the district recognizing him. He deserved it. He was a special person and a special product of the Durham Public Schools. That's my positive comment. Want to echo the condition of your schools. I talked to 2 teachers yesterday who reported 50-degree temperatures in classrooms at 2 different schools where they are having to teach students in conditions that are not conducive to learning. And it would be helpful if something could be addressed with the persistent HVAC issues that pervade across many, many, many schools in the district. Main reason I'm here is North Carolina law requires that you conduct your business as a school board in public. It's a legal requirement. You owe it to the community. There are some exceptions, but they're very limited. The Durham community is entitled to know when this board addressed and what each board member had to say on 3 questions raised by the events at Eno Valley Elementary School. Number 1, going forward, how do we prevent 6-year-olds from being tied up as discipline? Number 2, going forward, how do we ensure timely reports to law enforcement? Number 3, going forward, how do we ensure that school officials do not cover up or interfere in investigations of child abuse or other violations of the law? These discussions should occur in public, and when they don't, they should be disclosed to the public immediately after they occur. The public minutes of this board's meetings do not show any discussion of these 3 questions. To find the answer to whether this board addressed these questions in recent special meetings, I've filed public record requests. I would appreciate the requested records being made as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. That concludes general public comment. That brings us to our consent agenda.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Harold Goff and seconded by Ms. Rogers that we approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? If not, Ms. Rogers?
Millicent Rogers, I vote aye.
Mr. Tabb, I vote aye.
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 Aye. I vote aye as well. It passes unanimously. That brings us to the item that was added, the policy committee update. Those, that information has been shared with our board clerk, and we would ask that now that is on the agenda as an information item, that she go ahead and post that, and it is posted. Perfect. Thank you for bringing that, and thank you for leading that work, Ms. Carter Otten. That brings us to item 4, academic services, starting with the 2026 CTE month proclamation.
Good evening, board members. Today's Career and Technical Education prepares youth for high-wage, high-skill, high-demand careers in established and emerging industries. CTE Month is a public awareness campaign sponsored by the Association for Career and Technical Education that takes place every February to celebrate the value of CTE and the achievements and accomplishments of CTE programs across the country. Throughout the month of February, our CTE program will celebrate and promote the CTE programs in our schools and potential careers in Durham and across the U.S. Over the last year, we have done some exciting work in CTE. We welcomed all eighth graders to our third Accelerate Career event, where middle school students engage with employers to explore career options available in Durham. And we continued the redesign of how middle school students engage with CTE content through the implementation of our college and career ready labs. In CTE, our vision is for all students to be future ready. I want to say thank you to our CTE educators and support staff for the tremendous work they do to provide career opportunities to students in Durham Public Schools, and I remind them to stay future focused. Tonight, the CTE department is excited to put before you a proclamation declaring February 1st through the 28th, 2026 CTE month in Durham Public Schools. At this time, I invite you to read the proclamation aloud.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harris. Thank you for bringing this resolution here. How great to have a CTE student here with us this evening who is in pathways for her future. I'm wondering if you have anything you want to say, or so I'm just looking at you, but you might not.
So, like, okay. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, my experiences at CMA, I actually started taking like CTE classes my freshman year in high school, where I started with my first classes of health science, which are like fundamental classes to learn about healthcare up into like any healthcare events that have been throughout the US. So it's like a primitive learning for the final era, I like to call it, where as a senior you get to do CT pathways, which is where you actually get to be practice that get your certification in FON and pharmaceutical technician, and there's multiple pathways at CMA. We have medical assistant and as well as EMT. So as a CTE student, having classes really did put it to work so I can be as a future healthcare professional, you could say.
Thank you so much. That was so well said, and it's so amazing. I think our students are our best ambassadors for these amazing programs. And I think if more students and families knew what great programs we had and what great high school completion rates there are within the pathways, it's something we're so proud to celebrate. Any other comments before we read this resolution and proclamation? We could start with Ms. Rogers, if you're there, Ms. Rogers.
Yep. Career and Technical Education Month 2026 by the governor of the state of North Carolina, a proclamation. It is by the governor, is that right?
That sounds right.
Okay. Whereas all North Carolina students, whether they choose to pursue four-year college or not, should be able to get well-paying jobs that will support them and their families. And
Whereas career and technical education prepares students and young adults to succeed in academics and careers in both established and emerging industries, and
Okay. Whereas the mission of North Carolina secondary careers. Oh, there it is. Okay. Whereas the mission of North Carolina secondary career and technical education is to empower all students to be successful citizens, workers, and leaders in our global economy, and
Whereas career and technical education programs help students become the skilled workers that employers need to perform the jobs of today and tomorrow. And
Whereas career and technical education programs provide opportunities for students to acquire durable skills through schooling, reinforced by career exploration and experiences in work-based learning. And
Whereas career and technical education programs in North Carolina provide education for all students in the areas of agriculture, business, finance and marketing, career development, computer science, IT and technology, family and consumer sciences, health sciences, trade and industrial education, among others, and
Whereas North Carolina career and technical student organizations such as DECA, Distributive Education Clubs of America, Future Business Leaders of America, Family Career and Community Leaders of America, the National Future Farmers of America Organization, Health Occupational Students of America, Future Health Professionals, Skills USA, and the Technology Student Association support the work of career and technical education programs to develop character, citizenship, leadership, and technical skills essential for students who are preparing for the workforce and further education. And
Whereas, along with North Carolina's career clusters and state-supported career pathways, career and technical education programs aid in our state's workforce development efforts, and
Whereas the Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act demonstrates the crucial mission of these initiatives to enhance student readiness for successful careers and strengthen North Carolina's workforce.
Now, therefore, the Durham Public Schools Board of Education does hereby proclaim February 2026 as Career and Technical Education Month in North Carolina and urge all students and families to become familiar with the services and benefits offered by the career and technical education programs in Durham Public Schools and to support and participate in these programs to enhance their individual skills and productivity. Signed the 9th of February, 2026.
Thank you, guys.
thank you very much.
I make a motion that we approve the Career and Technical Education Month 2026 proclamation.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Chavez and seconded by Ms. Harold Goff that we approve this proclamation. Any further discussion? If not, Ms. Rogers?
Millicent Rogers, I vote aye.
Mr. Tabb, I vote aye.
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 And I vote aye as well. It passes unanimously and with enthusiasm. Thank you all so much for your work bringing this to us this evening. That brings us to an update, item B, summer programs. Have arrived.
Good evening. Good evening, Dr. Lewis, board, and those joining us tonight. Oh, there it goes. Tonight, I bring before you for information our summer programs 2026. My name is Ashley Stevens, Director of School Innovation. And while I lead this work, Summer Programs is a district-wide effort that collaborates across all central office departments and in partnerships with schools and families. Next slide, please. As part of the presentation, I will share an overview of the programs, the landscape of summer learning, and how we connect with our community. Next slide, please. The primary of our work is focused on priority 1, fostering academic excellence. There are strategic opportunities for this work to support efforts in priority 2, as each program is developed with considering the needs of the whole child. Priority 4, as we work to build community partners, and priority 5, as we have implemented summer operating procedures, ensuring operational efficiency. Next slide, please. Summer programs operationalize our strategic plan by extending learning through acceleration, access, and student supports centered and aligned to priority 1. Across programs, we align summer learning to literacy, college and career readiness, multilingual learner support, and inclusive practices for students with disabilities. Next slide, please. Our goal within all summer programs is to improve learning outcomes by providing extended year opportunities to strategic student groups. This summer, we anticipate that of the required and highlighted programs, Durham Public Schools will impact over 1,000 students, offer employment to over 100 DPS staff, and utilize 6 funding sources. These include federal, state, local, and grant funds. Some programs have parent fees and community partner scholarships. Next slide, please. Because we cannot serve every student through summer program, our focus is on delivering required programs with fidelity and maintaining strategic offerings by meeting the diverse needs of our specialized populations and building our capacity to serve more students through community partnerships. Despite funding shifts following the ending of ESSER, we have worked to strategically collaborate across the district to ensure our students have access to robust opportunities. Next slide, please. Durham Public Schools has a variety of programs open to enrich, enhance, and accelerate a diverse population of students. Process. Summer programs are planned through collaborative efforts across academic departments and budgeted as part of our fiscal year process. There may be updates and modification as the school year progresses. The next few slides take us through the programs being offered. Each slide will include a brief overview, details about the camp, and instructions on how to access the camp through registration and/or contact information. First, we have Read to Achieve. It's a summer camp that is part of the North Carolina Department of Instruction's Read to Achieve program. The program's goal is to help students read at or above grade level by the end of the 3rd grade. Next slide, please. Extended school year services are special education and related services provided beyond the school year when necessary to ensure that a student receives free and appropriate education. Next slide, please. In addition to our required programs, we are able to offer a plethora of other programs to support extended learning opportunities. English for Career Development is a program that targets advanced EL students. This program is in partnership with Durham Tech and will provide students with 1 elective credit. Next slide, please. English Language Summer Academy provides newcomers in their first year in the U.S. schools with real-life experiences through accelerated instruction in English, science, social studies, and math. Next slide, please. High School Back on Track is to assist high school students in recovering credit for previously failed courses. This supports seniors who need additional credits to graduate with the 2026 cohort and aids 9th through 11th graders with getting back or staying on track with their cohort. Last year, the Back on Track program yielded over 50 summer graduates who were able to graduate with the 2025 cohort. Next slide, please. Returning this year is the CTE Summer Quest program, a series of career opportunities for students in 6th through 12th grade to have career exposure through week-long programs, field trips, and internship experiences. Next slide, please. Rising Star Internship Program is a CTE 6-week summer internship program for rising juniors and seniors to provide hands-on, real-world experiences in various career fields. Next slide, please. Camp Fantastic, ran by our Community Education Department, offers a well-rounded summer experience for students, which includes academic enrichment, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. Next slide, please. Our Spark Camp provides an opportunity for advanced learners to explore universal themes with depth and complexity. It also serves as the practicum for Durham Public Schools arts teachers pursuing certification and those AIG licensure. Next slide, please. The National Inventors Hall of Fame sponsors Camp Inventions. It inspires curiosity and helps kids build essential STEM skills through collaboration with friends and creative problem-solving experiences. Campers explore hands-on challenges and open-ended adventures designed to encourage new discoveries and bring big ideas to life. Next slide, please. We will continue our partnership with the Hank and Billy Suber Aaron Young Scholars Research Institute. While there have been some leadership leadership transitions within the program, we are actively working with partners to finalize details and ensure a high-quality experience for our students. The program provides students with an opportunity to engage in collaborative, interdisciplinary research focus on understanding inequality and exploring pathways towards equity and social justice. Next slide, please. We aim to provide robust communication to our DPS community to ensure families have an appropriate opportunity to plan for summer enrichment and/or childcare. This includes updating the DPS website, the weekly Spark Letter, and press releases this spring. We also work with Durham County's Office on Youth to ensure our programs are listed as additional opportunities. Next slide, please. Community connections. Durham Public Schools is proud to continue to build partnerships with our community businesses, programs, and sponsors in order to provide enriched learning opportunities for our students. While not a comprehensive list, some include the DPSF Foundation, GSK, Kimley Horn, Duke Facilities, Durham Parks and Rec, Mark, McAdams, City of Durham Water Management, CT Wilson Construction Company, Brown Brothers Plumbing, the Bull City Wood Shop, Durham Technical Community College, DreamWorks, Echo Reverb, Bike Durham, and YMCA. It is our hope that all families find appropriate enrichment activities for their children to engage in during extended school breaks. To support, located on the DPS webpage, you will find not only the DPS sponsored programs, but also information about additional opportunities available in Durham County and surrounding areas. We will continue to work with our community partners and build new partnerships to further enhance summer learning opportunities for Durham Public Schools families. Next slide, please. Thank you for your time, and I open the floor for any questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Stevens. Really appreciate all the creative ways we are addressing K-12 needs all throughout the district over the summer. Colleagues, questions that you all have, thoughts? Chavez.
Thank you. I appreciate all the range of programming that we have for our students. It's so important, and the continual effort to develop more community partners and grow the opportunities that we have for young people. I have one specific question and then some broader things that I want to bring up. So the Hank and Billy Suber Aaron Young Scholars Summer Research
Yes.
Institute. I'll look that up at some point. How I got the full name, but is that funded entirely by Duke?
Yes, Duke funds that program entirely,
Okay.
but they work specifically with Durham Public School students.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. I think we've seen, great things out of that program. And then I wanted to, I sent these earlier this afternoon, but I'm interested to know, not right this second, but in the coming weeks and months, and would like to know what other board members think about this, if you saw my email. I would like to request the proposed budget for each of the summer programs
Yes, ma'am.
by the end of the month, if possible. And let me say, my desire is to understand, well, how we're spending our money on each. Thank you for putting in the dollar amounts for each.
Absolutely.
And what positions, are they all teachers, or are there other positions, like, is it materials? To understand where our funds are going, and then also some of the outcomes. So then I would also like to request the following data, but I think this would need board approval. By the June 2026 work session, how many students are enrolled in each program, demographic data on students enrolled, including race and ethnicity, gender, low SES status, ESL students, EC and AIG students, and then how many staff are enrolled and in what positions. And would love to know in August, although I won't personally be sitting in the seat, how many students completed the program out of how many students started the program. So I'd love to know if other board members are interested in that information.
Mr. Tab.
Thank you very much. I was very fortunate to hear all of this in agenda review, so it was very nice to hear the complete layout. Some of the questions we did talk about in the agenda review. Thank you, Ms. Chavez, for the further dive into what you're asking, and I'm wondering from you or Dr. King, by listening to that, do we feel as though that's you can quickly get that information by February within this month? So I just want to kind of get a feel of. I
And-
thought it said February 20 in the email.
The first part, the proposed budget for each summer program, I asked for by the end of February.
Right.
And then the other pieces by
Yes.
June.
So that's the piece I'm talking about. Was the February the 20? I think it's 26th or 27th. It's 27th. That's what I thought.
And just clarify, there's an estimated cost on the bottom of each slide. Do you want more budgetary detail than the estimated cost on the slide?
Yes, the breakdown of costs, basically. What I was interested in. Like how many teachers, materials, if you're doing transportation, etc.
And I just want to get a feel of what you all thinking, if that's reasonable, because she's asking the board to see if it's okay, respond. So I want to hear from you all. Thank you.
So I think we could get some of that data. I would ask for that data to be pushed back, uh, frankly, pretty significantly, because that will be time that our staff will have to use, that frankly, it would be most efficacious for the district if they could be focused on some other things. I would add that, again, as you can see there, most of our summer programs are partnership programs. So the overwhelming majority of those dollars are not Durham Public Schools dollars that will be going into those programs. I would ask if we might be able to, just considering where we are in terms of the year, the fact that we are in the middle of and in the heart of budget season, it would be probably, helpful to us if we could push that back to, and I'm looking at Mr. Teeter, April as a reasonable time. Is that acceptable?
I mean, I will support right however we need, but
Yeah, I was gonna just, good evening to everyone. We use our EOY data or end of year data that gives us a good picture of where we're projected to be for our potential EOGs and EOCs to make these projections. And I believe that those are mid to late April. But we would have more of a sense. We could also provide you last year's numbers so that you can see what would be comparable. But we try to get those dollars and those allocations down to the cent and the people, because we don't want to invite people to work and then we don't have the students, et cetera. So we do try to work through April to get that squared away.
To follow up, that I'm okay with that. And also, what is this? I thought that perhaps there was already a proposed budget sitting somewhere in someone's files, and that is how you came up with the estimated cost. But is that more sort of like just from last year? You're just bringing it forward, but you haven't figured out the budget for
Absolutely.
this
So
year?
those costs mainly come from last year and what we've used over the last few years. Our budgeted numbers, we almost always come in for less, mainly for what Ms. Sudbury said. We really try to be fiscally responsible and make sure our students who sign up, we have correct ratios. And if we're not getting the volume of signups that we want, that we didn't promise. Work to anyone that summertime. But yes, it would be based off of what we imagined from last year and then what we look like for this year. So for instance, Read to Achieve, we have a very large number of students that are eligible. We have another pot that register, and then another subset that actually comes and sees through the program. So while we may budget for something larger, it usually ends up to be a little bit less and sometimes right where we need to be.
April sounds fine to me. April, just to clarify, the work session or the monthly meeting, so I can put it on my own calendar. Okay.
And just to clarify and
Mhm.
be clear, we would only be able to provide that data for the programs that we fund. Remembering again that the overwhelming majority of these programs are programs that we partner with community agencies for, and we don't necessarily provide any funding for those programs. So just wanted to clarify that. And we
Now,
can certainly request that they provide us with their budgets, but we would be dependent on their reporting out their budgets.
It,
can I ask
oh.
follow up?
Ms. Rogers, yeah.
I would be interested in that data that Ms. Chavez is asking for. But for the events that are funded by parent fees, is the expense of that, the cost of that 100% covered 100% by parent fees?
So our Camp Funtastic is 100% covered by parent fees, I believe. Our Camp Inventions, the partnership that we work with, they provide scholarships. So one part of the program is funded by parent fees. The other part of the program is funded by scholarships. And then the third program, there's one more program, I believe, Spark is funded completely by parent fees.
Okay, so to Ms. Chavez's point, I would be interested in the data that she's requesting. I'm more so interested in the per pupil spending on that,
Absolutely.
as it relates to, yeah, the per pupil spending, because you have to hire the staff and all that stuff. And I know that there's stuff that's going to be personnel costs, there's going to be carrying costs, there's going to be building needs, etc. I'd be interested in knowing how many students are benefiting and which ones that DPS is paying for or routing the funding is the funding source for, um, and able to kind of assess that investment on the DPS side versus the number of students and the demographic of students that are benefiting from the programs.
Absolutely.
Okay, Ms. Chavez, do you understand what I'm describing?
Yes, I think I'm interested in that too. So yes, that's great.
Okay.
Ms. Carter Otten.
I'm also interested in this data. I think what stands out to me most is an interest in whether the programs are serving those that need them the most. And so that's why we would want to look at the demographic data,
Absolutely.
socioeconomic data, just to kind of keep an eye on that and make sure you all are doing. I remember this presentation from last year, and I think that your communication to us, at least about how you're doing outreach to families, is even better this year. So thank you for the work that you're doing to get the word out, but I think it's our job to then kind of check on the back end and make sure that it's serving the kids that need it the most.
Absolutely.
And also interested in any of the data there that would help us understand if we're getting a return on our investment or if we are getting what what we're hoping to get out of the programs. And so I'm curious to know to what extent you all gather any data from these camps on pre and post test scores for those that are academically focused or
Absolutely. So all of our programs that run through Durham Public Schools have metrics that they determine before it starts. So sometimes it is academic data, sometimes it's parent surveys for some of our parent ones. So we absolutely could bring back the metrics that each camp has. So for instance, Read to Achieve, they give an assessment at the end of that. So we could look at where they ended the year and where they were after they completed the Read to Achieve camp.
that's great. I think this will give the board a more complete picture of, again, this investment that we're making, how it's moving our children forward closer to our strategic plan goals of academic proficiency and social emotional learning, all of the different things, right?
Yes.
Okay, thanks so much.
So, Ms. Stevens, can I ask you if one of the slides has a typo or if I'm reading it wrong? Slide 13 in my deck about Summer Quest. You spoke to it as an opportunity for grades 6th through 12th, but then the details say rising 11th and 12th graders. So is it a 6th, 12th?
It's 6th through 12th. I can make
Okay.
sure that's updated when it's on the summer landing page.
That would be great. that would be great. I just hope that that was just a typo and that's the easiest thing to fix. Um, I appreciate the work you all do on this. I appreciate the request for data. I think my thinking on the request for data is that district staff, as it comes to you all and you what you have, you'll bring, but I think actually the more meaningful will be when y'all are looking and bringing it maybe in August. Like, I don't even really know. Me, it's just preliminary until you actually know who shows up and what children are served. To me, that's the time that the board in the future will really dig in with you on that analysis. The timing of it does seem important to see kind of who you expect to come, what you project, and then actually who does come and how the budgets are spent. Is there a reason also on what's the name of the camp for the IEP? Is there a reason that EKPO is the site for that camp? Which one is that? Sorry.
Yes, the extended year camp.
Yeah, is it
Yes.
just
So-
proximity or?
Yes, we look to find one that is somewhat centralized. And because of the nature of the programs that they support, we try to find a school that we can use year after year. They bring in a lot of materials, and EKPO is already prepared to have some of those things in-house already, and it leaves it a little bit less to move around. It's also one of our biggest has the biggest variety. We really don't know those numbers until students finish their last IEP meetings towards the end of the year. So that number could go up exponentially or it could be lower just depending on the student needs. So having a consistent place for that program to run, and EKPO offers, because of some of their special programs, offers what they need in that school. Prior, it was Hope Valley, and Hope Valley is now a year-round school, and we try not to utilize those buildings.
Gotcha. I just wondered about accessibility with their campus specifically and it being one of our more senior campuses, more mature campuses, whether those are ever issues for families as they navigate that and the playgrounds and things. But I'm sure you all have thought all of that through.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts on this? This is an information item. Do you all feel like you have consensus on the notion of data that we need? Do you need us to take a vote? Do you need us to do some consensus thumbs up? How are you feeling? And was the request kind of clear enough?
Yes, we have it also in writing, and I'll just move that that first date back to April.
April 23rd, I wrote down for the board meeting.
Absolutely.
I'll resend it if you want. Added the per pupil spending, at Ms. Rogers' request. And may I add one more thing, which is by August, the final budget with actual expenses, just so we can. 'cause you
Absolutely
said it's like-
compare
Yeah,
from what we suggested to what was final.
thank you so much.
Ms. Stevens, do you have the metric piece? 'Cause I don't think that was in your original.
Oh, yes, and I'm going to include the metrics so that we can
Can
see.
I ask that it not be August? Can it be included in the back to school academic update that we normally get in September?
Fine with me. Yeah, there seems to be some head nodding here at the table.
Okay,
There's
I
some-
can't see it. Thank you.
No, I'm
Sorry.
trying to interpret it for you. Is that good with folks? Yep.
With the metrics also.
With the
Come.
metrics, I think so. I think, yep.
Preliminary data in June, however, and then finalized data at the back to school in September. Perfect.
I heard April, I heard June, I heard September.
Yes, so
and
April
so-
for the budget, and then June for some preliminary data on who has registered, what those demographics are looking like, and then September for actual data impact from the actual programs, actual cost, and a little deeper dive at who stayed, who showed up, and are we meeting the needs of our most vulnerable populations?
And I'm asking colleagues, I think, could some of this information be presented in a board update rather than in a meeting? Or A Friday update, yeah, superintendent's update? Yeah? Okay, so we got consensus on that. Ms. Rogers, is that good with you as well? Don't have Ms. Rogers right there at the moment, but let's, yeah, Ms. Connor-Doughton.
Is that some or all of the data to be provided in a weekly update rather than a board to just the April data? Okay, excellent. I was thinking I think the community probably wants to see the other data. Okay, perfect.
Right. Great report.
Thank you.
Looking forward to getting students enrolled. Thank you for all your
evening.
work on these detailed programs. Right, that brings us to item C, a technology update, student device model. Much interest in this for being with us.
Good evening, Board Chair, Board members, Dr. Lewis, cabinet members present. Paul Mijimbi, Executive Director of Information Technology, here to present to you a technology update about the Student Device Program. I'll be presenting together with Assistant Superintendent Chanel Sidbury. Tonight's presentation is about the direction of our Student Device Program, not just devices themselves, but how technology supports learning across the district. We'll briefly cover where we started, where we are today, and where we recommend heading next, grounded in data, stakeholder input, and operational realities. This work is a close partnership between information technology and our major partners, curriculum and instruction, because instruction impact and operational sustainability must move together. Next slide. The Student Device Program directly supports Strategic Priority 1, academic excellency, and Priority 5, operational responsibility. This program enables customized learning, smarter teaching, and future-ready skills. And these directly support strategies like supporting curriculum implementation, closing opportunity gaps, career and college readiness, and multi-tiered systems of support. Our guiding principle is simple: learning goals drive technology decisions, not the other way around. Next slide. According to the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs Report 2025, students are entering a workforce shaped by data, technology, AI, and problem solving. This emphasizes that purposeful use of technology builds critical thinking, independence, creativity, and digital literacy, which in turn make our students ready for the workforce of the future. Right. Where we've come from, this slide shows the evolution of DPS's one-to-one strategy. This DPS operated on a 1-to-3 model in 2018 and the years before. The 1-to-1 model launched in 2020 amidst the pandemic and successfully addressed the critical access and equity gap during and after the pandemic. It ensured continuity of instruction during a time of crisis, and that was the right decision. However, the universal take-home model was not designed for long-term sustainability. And that is not a failure. It's a natural evolution from emergency response to long-term planning. As you can see, when it comes to funding and purchases, we've been all over the place. They were all reactionary based on the different relief available funds that were available. There was CARES Act, ESSA 1 and 2, there was ECF, we've gone to the state funds, and most recently, the last purchase, I think we had capital outlay funds. This slide shows where we are today. DPS currently operates a 1-to-1 model across all grade levels with sufficient devices for every student. Technology is embedded in daily instructional practice, and teachers identify small group instruction and timely feedback as the highest impact users. Students also report devices are most helpful for independent practice, research, and collaboration. Slide. This slide depicts our operational realities. Managing a district of this size means managing tens of thousands of devices. Annual challenges are not temporary, they're structural realities. Device and charger wear and tear, I think you all always hear about that. Lost or stolen devices, adapters, HDMI cables, and other classroom accessories, projector parts, bulbs, repair demand, staffing capacity, and budget limits. These are all realities that we face and live with. The expected conditions in a one-to-one environment, and ignoring them definitely leads to reactive decisions and inequitable outcomes. Addressing them requires intentional long-term planning. Next slide, please. On this slide, we do technology fees is an is an initiative that was started this school year. The technology fees collected this year have helped offset device repair costs, but they do not cover the full operational need. Repairs continue to outpace fee revenue. This reinforces the need for a sustainable system-level approach, not reliance on short-term fixes. As you can see, out of our current student population, 12,274 students paid the tech fees and 697 asked for waivers. Not shown on this slide, we have 250 students who opted out of technology. We managed to collect 293,000, but so far we have $352,000 worth of repairs, and this is still growing. This is just between July 2025 and now. We shall continue working with our school leaders as regarding communicating and engaging families about the importance of the tech fees in relation to sustaining our student device program. Right. Before deciding how devices are deployed, we grounded our work in instructional needs. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Chanel.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, board, community administration. Chanel Sitberry here to give you the curriculum's perspective, which is the undergirding of our decision for this evening. Next slide, please. If you take a quick glance at this picture, you will see what one-to-one learning looks like in action. I will call the board to the attention of the fact that it's more than just student devices. You see an interactive panel for students to have interactive instruction. You see collaborative grouping and seating. You see a teacher device. So all of these things are part of being one-to-one. And Durham Public Schools has been addressing the student device and perhaps not all the aspects of what it means to be one-to-one in terms of teaching and learning. So effective technology looks like enhanced teaching and learning, collaboration and engagement. Our devices should be paired with strong teaching and learning expectations and clear instructional intent. And this reinforces that technology enhances instruction and it does not replace quality teaching and learning. Next slide, please. This slide is a visual of the three founding principles when you think about Durham Public Schools philosophies when it comes to teaching and learning. Again, technology should enhance and not dominate learning experiences. We want to make sure we have purposeful supports for differentiation, access to rigorous content, as well as engagement. We also want to look at what's developmentally appropriate and make sure that students build skills over time without over-reliance on our screens. So in summary to our community, that means we want quality over quantity in terms of use of technology. We want active use more than passive use, sitting on a device and just clicking. And then in our lower grades, we want to make sure that we give clear guidance to our teachers around teacher-mediated supports for our younger grades involving technology. Next slide, please. So this slide is a graphic that shows you in a nutshell what effective teaching and learning looks like this day and age. Technology is an integral part of that. So devices are a part of a larger ecosystem here in Durham. We have our high impact teaching strategies, assessments, feedback, student supports. Those are all connected to the use of technology. So when aligned, all of these things create strengthen learning outcomes for students. But overuse, of course, and misalignment with our expectations weakens the system and dilutes the impact. Next slide, please. This is yet another graphic to just show the board in our community what Durham Public Schools relies on when it comes to technology. So technology supports critical needs for us in terms of curriculum access. Every time this board has approved a curriculum, they have also approved digital access to that curriculum. Assessments that are approved, such as our interim assessments, there are digital assessments and given online, just like our state assessments are given online. Our credit recovery, reading supports, interventions, e-learnings, all of those things are contingent upon our students having access to devices. So in summary, we need reliable and well-maintained systems. So we want to make sure, again, that we undergird this understanding of technology as it is a proponent of quality teaching and learning. It is not a substitute for quality teaching, and we want to come back with some guardrails and expectations clearly around how this looks instructionally by using technology as a tool and not the primary vehicle for teaching and learning. Next slide. I will happily turn it back over to Paul Mujumbi, who will walk you through our stakeholder input, which includes all facets of our community, students, leaders, teachers, et cetera. Paul?
First and foremost, I'd like to thank, students, the families, teachers, staff, principals, and other district leaders who participated and provided us with this feedback. The feedback helped us refine and sharpen the decision we bring tonight. Across all groups, we had consistent themes giving us confidence in the recommended direction. Next slide. Start with the family's perspective. By closing time, we had heard from 260 families. These families support device access when it's purposeful, accountable, and age appropriate. Primary concerns included screen time, safety and content, cost if devices are lost or damaged. And again, these are development and behavioral concerns, not access concerns. 88% reported reliable internet most days, but a meaningful minority still experience instability, reinforcing the need for equity safeguards. In this case, I think it alludes to things like hotspots. Parents also value devices for homework completion, access to materials, and continuity during absences, not entertainment. Next slide. We received feedback from over 1,200 students. This feedback, we read that students value devices most when used for authentic learning tasks such as projects, research, assessments, and catching up after absences. Most students use devices primarily for learning, not entertainment. Home Wi-Fi reliability varies, which we also heard from the families, again, alluding to hotspots. When homework requires a device, students strongly prefer taking an assigned device home. Next slide. We also heard from over 1,800 staff, teachers and staff. We also received, from this feedback, we read that devices are widely used, but selectively, often for part of a class period. Primary uses are practice, research, and assessment, not constant instruction. Staff see instructional value of the devices, but expressed mixed views on sustainability of full take-home models. They also highlighted that equity challenges outside of school persist. Damage and inappropriate use dominated operational concerns. Next slide. We also received feedback from over 100 school leaders, and from their feedback, we learned that instructional value comes from pedagogy, not device presence. Top pain points included device condition, loss and damage, time spent managing devices, times 2 to 10 hours per week. Nearly 80% of the leaders view the current take-home model as only somewhat not sustainable. Clear preference for limits in elementary grades paired with strong accountability also were picked from this feedback. This slide shows a differentiated student device model that we present to you tonight. This recommendation balances equity, instruction, development, and sustainability. For the pre-K or K through 2, we recommend a limited one-to-one school day model. For 3 to 5, we recommend a one-to-one school day model with limited optional take-home for specific needs. 6 through 8, we recommend a one-to-one school day model with optional take-home for specific needs such as identified courses, students without home access, and time-bound instructional needs. For 9 through 12, we recommend a full one-to-one take-home model paired with clear accountability measures such as insurance, repair options, and digital citizenship expectations. Our non-negotiables for equity will need to be reinforced and monitored, such as in partnership with schools. We shall have clear district criteria for when take-home is required. To meet learning needs, we shall ensure guaranteed access for students whose learning plans require devices. For clarity on the student experience, we shall have consistent messaging so families don't experience school-by-school confusion. Next slide. This slide shows what's not changing. Our commitment to equitable access, that's not changing. Technology as a support for instruction, definitely that's not changing. Ongoing teacher access to tools and training. Student access to devices when learning requires them, and our strong collaboration between IT and CNI, and also the ongoing focus on student learning, engagement, and success. This next slide here, this chart shows two things side by side. What the board has already invested over time since 2020, and what a planned warranty-based model looks like going forward. The key message here is we're not starting new spending. We're organizing spending that's already happening, so it's more predictable and less disruptive to learning. I'll start with the student devices. Over the last 6 years, the district has spent roughly $15.1 million on student devices. Those purchases were largely reactionary, responding to failures rather than following a planned refresh. The proposed annual investment stabilizes cost, ensures warranty coverage, and protects instructional time. For repairs, repair costs were low early on in the beginning because devices were under warranty. So most times we saw almost no costs on that, but as devices have started going out of warranty, that cost has gone up. It has grown rapidly, reaching nearly 440,000 and still counting. Under the recommended model, those unpredictable costs are absorbed through warranties. Charges are a good example of hidden costs. As we have seen over time, so far we're at 460,000 worth of charges. We've had that same theme over and over again about charges. Standardization and inclusion removes this recurring drain on operating funds. Interactive displays, the bright links, the projectors in the classrooms. Historically, displays were replaced only after failure. Up to now, it only fails. After it fails, that's when we jump into action to put in another one that could work. The last refresh for projectors that you see in the classroom, this was over 10 years ago. I think if I remember, it must have been around 2013 or thereabout. A planned $800,000 to $1 million annual investment creates a predictable lifestyle and avoids inequitable classroom experiences life cycle. Staff devices, staff and teacher devices are often replaced only after increasing failures. I think the last time we had a pocket of ECF money and we did a refresh, but that didn't cover everybody. This one, I think, covered only classroom teachers. Again, a planned 900 to 1.1 million annual refresh ensures continuity and not convenience and avoids disruptions. Again, the board has already invested approximately $60 million since 2020. This recommendation shifts us to a 4.6 million annual planned investment. And again, the question isn't whether we pay for technology, it's whether we pay reactively or intentionally. And again, if not funded, we shall definitely keep in the same volatile, reactionary, uncertain mode that we've been in and we're trying to get out of. At this point, I'll turn it back to Ms. Spett. Very glad.
So alongside this, I wanted to make sure that I preview some information for the board from the curriculum and instruction side. So as I mentioned, the technology and the curriculum goes hand in hand. So this graphic shows you over the next 3 years, kind of things that we anticipate alongside of this annual commitment to technology would also be responsive to our teaching and learning resources. So this year's, I think my team would say this is ROI year. I'm requesting everything that we have purchased. I want to know the usage of it. I want to know the impact of it. I want us to be very clear around the things that are causing us to have strong student impact and things that are not. And that is going to allow us to clear the roadway for some of the work ahead. So for this year, we're looking at return on investment in several of our tools, including e-learning, credit recovery, and our diagnostic and intervention tools. I will be providing that analysis, which will include the usage, impact on student outcomes, fidelity of implementation, and cost effectiveness. The goal here is to determine which tools are delivering value, what needs adjustment, and what do we need to just stop. And so I will be bringing those ROI findings within the next few months back to the board for review and approval. Again, this ensures that any continued investment or decision to replace tools or discontinue them is based on evidence. The next year is ELA. And so right now the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction has already revised our ELA standards. After that, it will be our mathematics standards. And for those of us who have been in the business for a while, that means changing curriculum, changing standards, and a change in the assessment at the state level. So next year, we can anticipate adopting an ELA curriculum. That will primarily be on our K-5 side, but we'll also look at implementation fidelity on the 6-12 sides. So next year, ELA will become the anchor that we tie everything to in terms of impact on learning across content areas. Literacy is agnostic. Every teacher in our district should be supporting literacy in some way. And then after that, you will see the following year bringing mathematics back to you. Our mathematics standards are going to be changing as well at the state level. And so we'll be looking to bring back a recommendation for curriculum at the 6-12 level for mathematics. Our goal here is coherence and sustainability. And so I also want to be mindful of the needs of our teachers. And so the math adoption following the ELA is on purpose so that our teachers are not implementing 2 new curricula and trying to figure out standards and curriculum at the same time. So this allows us, our pacing to reserve the instructional quality and teacher capacity. So in this regard, you will see that I'll bring back recommendations for purchase and discontinued of purchases. We will look at research best practices on both the science of reading as well as on the mathematics side. In particular, in mathematics, we want to do a vertical alignment check and make sure that standards are leading students to the right level of cognitive demand. And we want to make sure that our tech tools, such as calculators and other digital resources that are now called for students to be able to do, that they are also embedded in our resources as well. At the bottom, you will see the mindset of continuous improvement undergirding everything that we do here. So across these 3 years, we'll maintain a continuous annual review cycle. This includes data review, fidelity monitoring, equity, impact, and budget alignment. Addition, this is how we avoid initiative overload and ensure investments lead to improved outcomes. So these in considerations are to give you a holistic picture of what we're looking for in the next few years. So I'll turn it back over to Paul to make a recommendation.
At this point, administration recommends that the board affirms and supports a standing annual technology refresh commitment of approximately 4.6 million per year over the next 5 years, which is approximately $23 million over the next 5 years. This is reflected in the 26-27 technology budget asks for student devices and interactive displays, and teachers' devices will be reflected in the 27-28 technology budget asks. This commitment and investment supports classroom instructional displays, student devices required for daily instruction and assessments, teacher devices, which are essential to instruction, operations, and data use. Again, this approach reflects the true cost of ownership and avoids deferred replacements, system instability, and emergency spending. Next slide. Oh, okay, there you go. All right, that's the presentation for today. Thank you, and we appreciate the board's partnership, and we're happy to take any of your questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Majumbi and Ms. Sidbury. You all have brought a tremendous amount of information in the most beautiful slide deck ever presented in this boardroom. Extra credit there. I'm going to see which colleagues are interested in leading off with questions because you have asked for $4.6 million times 5, if I'm doing my math right. Ms. Chavez.
Well, thank you. This is a very well-developed proposal, and I appreciate it. You brought data from our various constituents and also a long-term or maybe intermediate, but plan and something to have a sustainable plan. And that is so important. I think this is what I have wanted to see. So thank you. I do have a few questions. My first question is about limits on screen time for younger students for K through 2. Is that part of curriculum guidelines that are being developed and during either instructional time or lunch as well?
Thank you, Paul. So a couple of things I want to bring up to the community as well around the research with regard to screen time. And so what research has shown us in previous years connected to COVID, it was very much looking at minutes of instruction. How much time do you spend on the device? The research now, 2024-25, looks at the quality of what you're doing on the device. We want to do what is developmentally appropriate, but right now we don't have in our guidance any stipulations around those minutes. What we do have is certain programming with intentions. So for instance, our iReady intervention tools, students are supposed to have 45 minutes a week. They can sparse that time out, 10 minutes, you know, how the teacher does that. So we want to bring back guidelines and happy to bring those to the board if they want to hear, but we do not have those regulatory guidelines in our current practices right now in Durham Public Schools, which is why we do see that variance. I can share what research says, but I also want to take the time, just like we did tonight, to take that back to our teachers, our community and our family and get their insights on that before we make that our procedures.
Sure. I'm not necessarily, I mean, you all are doing the research, but it's so, I trust that, but that, you know, of course that, I'm always thinking about screen time and limits on that, but,
Can
so,
I ask a clarifying question, Ms.
Sure, sure.
Chavez, about
Yeah.
that?
Mhm.
When you all are assessing screen time limits, does that include um, time in the classroom and time expected to be spent on screens outside of the classroom?
So I think what we would want to do is define, we don't have any definitions around any of the things you're asking, Board Member Rogers. I think that that comes with responsible use of the devices. And as Mr. Majumbi mentioned to you previously, we're one-to-one for reactionary to what was going on in our world right now. So now we're playing catch up in terms of what it looks like day to day. So we would have conversations with our leaders, our teachers, to find out exactly what guidance would say. But in terms of what the research says, the American Association of Pediatrics look at to not necessarily the minutes of time, but the quality of what students are doing in our lower grades, and also making very close ties to what adults are doing to mediate and support students during that time. And again, quite frankly, that's just something we have to tighten up in terms of our guidance and feedback that we give to our community.
Thank you.
well, that, I mean, I think that sounds great with everything that you have. I trust that you're going to develop those guidelines that will be most evidence-based and useful for, you know, for students and their learning. So I also wanted to ask about this concept of tech-free days. We were at a North Carolina School Board Association session in November, and there was a district, I can't remember which one now, but they do tech-free days. I think it was like Tuesday and Thursday. Is that something that you all have, has it come up at all? I don't know if other districts do that as well. But as you think about curriculum, if not, I would just offer it as a possibility to consider what that might be. It was kind of intriguing, and it was shared in the context of talking about like cell phone policy and all of that. Have you heard of this at all? No.
I have not heard of it. I definitely would be open to taking that back to our constituents and find out what their lives would be in practice in terms of making those adjustments. I think that we want to be mindful of kind of what teachers are experiencing now and how we create a runway to change anything of that significance, especially in our high schools and middle schools where our teachers, our students have courses that they take asynchronously and synchronously. They would need a device every day to access those. So I definitely can take that in consideration and bring that back to the board with some data and feedback. Paul?
Yeah, I would want to make sure we approach that extremely carefully. You know, if students are on games all the time, yes, there needs to be a tech-free Tuesday or Thursday. But if we're really intentional about using these devices from an instructional standpoint, I don't want the message to, you know, be received as, okay, now I'm limited in my learning on these Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I get the motive behind it, but just being really careful on how we approach that. And so maybe it's called something else, but really, you know, think back during our days, if we had a textbook free Tuesday and Thursday, we probably would have loved that, right? But it's really a device that is a avenue to student learning and engagement. So just kind of being mindful and careful of how we roll something like that out if we did.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I offer it to consider, or, you know, and maybe it's a tech light day, or maybe not at all. If, you know, I do think the most important thing is using these devices and everything as tools, and very thoughtfully and all of that. So my last question is about devices for nonverbal students, communication devices. Is that part, and or for limited verbal students, AAC devices, is that part of our tech master plan, or that's kind of aside altogether?
That would normally show up in a student's IEP in terms of assistive technology devices
Yeah.
and their individual IEP.
And those devices are usually purchased through our special education budget.
Exceptional.
So it's separate from.
Okay. Okay.
In fact, we just made a purchase, just signed a document last week, updating some of those documents.
Thank you.
Ms. Carter Otten and then Ms. Harold Goff, is that?
I have My questions are around three broad topics. One is around ensuring that tech's used to enhance learning, not like replace the role of the teacher. Other is concerns around screen time, and the other is like safety of tech use. So I guess for the first one, that one stands out to me as being really most important. We talked about this in agenda review too, but like I'm curious to know, how would you describe that we are as a district ensuring that we are following the best practices available for using technology to enhance learning? And then likewise, how are we ensuring that our educators in our classrooms know how to do that and that they are doing that in practice?
So I say very similar to my comment previously, we don't have those safeguards and recommendations in place right now. Largely what we're doing with our technology is what we were doing during the COVID days, which is we have it and we can have it to use, but we have not given specifics in terms of what this best practice looks like. There has been professional learning that happened on the on-site of when we were coming out of COVID around TPAC, and that was a strong proponent of professional learning for our teachers to talk about what does it look like to be a good steward as an instructional leader of technology. But as a person who is new but looking foundationally, it doesn't seem that we have ongoing professional learning around that. So that's something that we would have to come back with some procedures and guidelines and talk to our teachers. So we know what best practice says, but we also want to make sure that we give our teachers time to make adjustments to their own instructional practices to align to that best practice. So in short, I could not tell you holistically what we are doing in Durham is very much contingent school to school, classroom to classroom at this time.
Okay, that's helpful. I think for me, that feels important to be in place and for us to know that before we say that we're going to continue to spend millions of dollars every year on the technology. And so I'm wondering, is that something that you would create a plan and then bring that to the board to take a look at, so that we know, again, that we're not just spending on tech, but we don't know how it's actually being used in classrooms, or that it's being used consistently, and again, that's following best practices. So could you tell us more about when that would come back to the board, what that could look like when it came back to the board?
Sure, I think it looks very similarly, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, it looks similarly to getting feedback from our teachers, from our students, from our community around best practice and what implementation looks like. I'm happy to bring that back. That's more on the procedural side and not really a board approval thing, but happy to bring that back if that gives the board confidence. I think what we can say is that we've put several safeguards in terms of being good stewards over the devices with our reconciliation process 3 times a year, as well as our tech fees. So we are showing good faith in terms of being good stewards. With Paul being about a year in, me about 8 or 9 months in, trying to get our feet underneath us for something that you can see has been going on in our district for a good period of time. So I'm happy to bring that back to the board, maybe in the summer. We would want to be relaunching those expectations in the next school year and make sure we have a very long runway to get feedback from our staff, which would be have to make those changes in practice and what that looks like.
Okay, thank you. And then I always appreciate going to staff that are on the ground to get feedback. This feels like something that the feedback on how it would be best implemented, or what current practices might align with this, that's what I would see you would get from staff. But the guidance on like how to approach this, shouldn't that be coming from the district level and then guiding the staff rather than staff telling the district? Can you maybe I'm
Sure.
hearing
So,
incorrectly, but
I think, let me clarify. So any policy that this board approves is just words. And so how do we translate that into practice? And so what I'm asking is, I'm happy to bring to board what research and best practice says, but we also know that there's some gray area between how we're right now acting and behaving in our classrooms with our students and what that transition would look like. So I would want to have conversations with our staff, with our leaders to say, what does it look like? How much professional learning, how much time time will we need? Will we need less time in K2 and more time in 612? I would want to know exactly what it would feel like to a teacher who is compounding other changes that we're implementing both at the state and local level, how this holistically looks in terms of resetting our expectations for the next school year. So listen, I'm happy to bring you best practice, but what I'm saying is we would want to have that time with our community, with our teachers, the people who actually have to make these changes to say, what is that runway and the support that you need to effectively relaunch this moving into the next year.
Okay, thank you. And then the screen time has been mentioned by a colleague. You had responded to that. Just want to lift that up again as a concern that's came out in the survey that you all do with parents, but I hear that all the time from parents, especially. It might be because I have a first grader and a fourth grader, so they're in the younger grades, but that is something that just the quantity of the time and I'm sure they're concerned with quality as well. And then the safety is something that it came up in the survey results, but we haven't talked about it a lot today, but I know that's of concern to parents as well. Like, what can my kids access when they're on devices? Could you speak a little bit to how the district, both through blockers and through education, might be working to protect students from make sure they're only accessing age-appropriate content where possible and that they are not able to access things that they shouldn't be able to when they're on our devices?
I'll start on that and then I'll pass it on. From a district perspective, from a technology perspective, we've tried to instill tools, whether it's starting straight from the firewalls, or we have a tool called Zscaler that's used to block all kind of sites. Again, we can't catch it all. Most times you always get requests, you always see emails, help desk tickets saying, hey, this site, my kid was about to get to this site. These sites are being developed every day. But yeah, from a district perspective, infrastructure perspective, we have tools like Zscaler. That's what we use for blocking all sites. This year or previous year, there was a tool called GoGuardian. Some schools are using that. So that builds on top of what Zscaler does. And this is used as classroom management. Teachers can go in and say, hey, kids in this class, during this instructional period need to access these websites. So basically from this perspective, we have the tools. But I think just to add on to that, we need, and I think I mentioned it, one of the commitments, the collaboration to know and say, hey, block these sites. I'll give an example that has been happening the past couple of weeks. There's Google Lens. I don't know if some of you have heard of Google Lens. On one end, it's a good tool. And then we started getting feedback from the school saying students are using it to cheat, to get around programs and things of that nature. So we started blocking it, and currently it's blocked for all students. But point I'm trying to make here is the collaboration, that we have these tools in place. But I think what we haven't been doing effectively, or so much so, is the collaboration with instruction to say, we put this tool in place, how is it doing? Should we tune it up? Should we tune it down? And I think that feedback coming from the instructors on the front lines will help us fine tune and improve the safety and students. Otherwise, these students keep running circles around us, and we just have to work with educators to, reconfigure them, beef them up, block more content, because on our end, we might say, that's an innocent site, and then someone says, oh, YouTube Shorts, So I think we need additional collaboration on what's that fine-tuning that we need as a district to that.
Yeah, and I was going to just say, and professional learning. I was trying to get the name GoGuardian. So GoGuardian is a very nice tool, and it's not expensive in a large scale of what we spend resources on. The teacher with proper professional learning can see the devices, screens of all students simultaneously, but that takes management, right? So if I am uncomfortable with doing that, again, that goes back to my point of creating this runway for teachers. GoGuardian is very sophisticated when you know how to use it. And so there are some teachers who can get on and use it right away to manage their students effectively. And on the other hand, there's some teachers who are going to need a lot of support and with that. I think it goes back to everything that I've been saying when I stand up here. We have had these tools, and what we want to do is have implementation fidelity of these tools. We want to provide adequate professional learning and hold people accountable to use these tools, not because we say so, but because it's a part of the landscape of how we are good stewards over the resources.
Thank you. Yes.
Just add for the record on that, we are required per SIPA, the Child Internet Protection Act, to have a tool or device that protects our students from accessing sites that they should not be on. So we are SIPA compliant.
That's helpful. You had mentioned the YouTube Shorts, and you between YouTube and YouTube Shorts, that's what I am thinking of when I'm thinking of things I might not want my younger children to see. Okay. I care a lot about this. I just have two more things to say. One, I did have a point of clarity, which is you said for elementary or the K2 limited one-to-one school day only. What does the limited mean? I guess I'm left wondering if we are staying with one-to-one for our K2 students, how limited, how we should interpret limited there, or are they sharing devices and just not taking them home?
So first of all, I think limited comes into the use. So yeah, every state, again, it's one-to-one. If an elementary school, say if they have, 200 students through K through 2, they'll have 200 devices, but the limit is in the instructional use. A teacher might choose to just, maybe use 15 devices for that class period or whatever activity they'll need. But say, for example, when it comes to assessments, they will have the devices one-to-one. So I think the limited is in the application of the technology in the day-to-day instruction in the classroom, which we shall leave to discretion, of course, of the classroom teachers, of the principals, but they will have sufficient devices for each and every student. It's the limit. The limited is in the application, if I may put it that way.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And then lastly, we haven't updated our technology and responsible use policy since 2017. A lot, and that's on the board. A lot has changed in the last 9 years as relates to technology. If I look at Chapel Hill Carborough's, for example, it feels like more robust and up to date. And I wonder if some of these things we've been talking about should be something that the board should grapple with, or the administration should bring us recommendations to be put into policy if we want better. You mentioned guardrails earlier. So just something to put out there into the ether. And thanks so much for all of your work, y'all.
Ms. Harold Goff, and then both colleagues online have questions as well. Thanks.
All right, I won't be very long. I just wanted to lift up that I really appreciate the intentionality that the technology use aligns with our district's teaching and learning initiatives, our curriculums, and our resources. That is amazing. I appreciate that being a very big part of this presentation on how that would work. I'm on slide 21, and where you talk about the evaluation and readiness and the curriculum adoptions over the next few years. And so I didn't want to assume, does that mean that next year we will be adopting a new ELA curriculum?
Potentially, yes. So we want to do, we have core curriculum. We want, right now, the team is looking at alignment, how well, there is no curriculum in any subject that fully aligns to North Carolina state standards. So let me just say that to the
Yeah.
board and the community. So right now, we're doing an audit of how well, what are our gaps? Is it even worth, we're really just looking at piece by piece and having a long runway for our teachers. If our teachers want to maintain the curriculums, there's implications of that in terms of supplemental resources. If they want something new, then it comes to another assessment and how well that addresses state standards. So overall, we'll bring those recommendations back to the board.
All right, I think what I was curious about, and I know that you've been very intentional also with the engagement, which I appreciate. I remember being in the classroom and curriculum's changing and just being, even though we would get maybe, a 6-month, 8-month runway, and then all of our resources are changing and we're trying to, and so I'm curious about how, with the data review and the fidelity monitoring, how are our educators being included in how everything is going to come out, like how just like everybody's not listening to the board meeting. How do we get the buy-in from our educators when we're shifting things, which requires them to shift? I learned over time, that's part of the job description, is you just have to be ready. But wondering how we're thinking about, what that looks like, or how we communicate that to our educators when these shifts are coming with curriculum, resources, materials, and things like that.
So in terms of the core curriculum, we do an RFP. We work with our teachers, our coaches, our leaders to develop what are the criteria of things that we believe are not absolutely non-negotiable for Durham Public Schools to have a high quality teaching and learning curriculum. We post that out through the RFP process, and there are businesses and companies that will apply. We then bring that back to our RFP committee. Most likely what happens in Durham in the previous years in adoption, we have core curriculum teams at each school. Each school gets an opportunity to look at those curriculums, assess those curriculums. I'm speaking from previous experience when I was standing at this podium asking for money. We did parent nights, we did family engagement nights. So we were planning to bring that same level of responsiveness to our community so they can really get a sense of what our options are. And we will bring back those, every teacher will have a vote, every department will have a vote. And we'll bring those, just like we did tonight, bring back those recommendations based on where we are as a school community. I do want to kind of caution just the precursor of this. On the last time here looking at literacy curriculum, we brought forth a recommendation of 2 curriculums. I think that we have a long history of things that we can share about what works and what does not work by making that decision. And so I would hope to bring 1 core curriculum back at K5 for recommendation.
Are we looking at like a runway of, like, does that take course over the over when a new curriculum is, and I'm asking because I really don't know, when a new curriculum is going to be adopted, is that a runway of a year? Is that
So we
a
have
year and a
about
half?
18 months.
18 months, okay. Thank you.
Ms. Rogers, you have questions?
Yeah, I do. I appreciate everything that everybody suggested. The policy refresh. Would love to see a recommendation go through the policy committee, submitted through the form, so the board can tier it for the policy committee to do that work. My question is more high level, less about how it's implemented at the schools, less about screen time. But the recommendation of the 5-year commitment, the $4.6 million per year of the next 5 fiscal years. And so, I guess my first question is between what we know about enrollment and the number of students opting in to Chromebooks, is any of that $4.6 million covered by the tech fees? Or is this in addition to the tech fees?
So just on one of the slides in the presentation, it gives a correlation of tech fees and where we are with damages and fees. And so right now, our technology fees are just slightly offsetting that. Again, what we will look forward to with this recommendation is to have our damages and warranties, lost and stolen type resources will be covered under warranty, which we are not currently. And so in theory, what we would have is over time, as our families are paying into that tech fee, we will have a pot of money that we will be able to use as a resource as we go forth with future purchases. Right now, I think we're less than 50% of our students and families are paying that fee right now. We're happy to bring those figures back, but in theory, yes, this will be able to offset some of those expectations. 4.6 would be the absolute ceiling, knowing that we would still have to accommodate changes in ADM, et cetera, et cetera. So if anything, that number could potentially go down.
Okay, that's helpful. I think, um, I don't know if this is something y'all will answer, or Mr. Teeter, Dr. Lewis, whoever you decide. Um, my question would be, where y'all recommending that this money come from, right? Is this capital funding?
Mr. Teeter is on his way. Just one moment.
So
Okay.
yeah, and if I can jump on your question, Ms. Rogers, too, I would like to reiterate, like, how much money the state actually gives districts for technology, if we have an estimate on that. Because I'm guessing Mr. Teeter's going to say this is a local request.
Yes. One thing before you get there, Mr. Teeter, just a sharing I'd like to make about a conversation I was in just recently with state instructional leaders across the state. There does appear to be, this is an issue across the entire state. School districts who have kind of put ourselves out there in terms of technology use and expectation of having technology, and having done that during the ESSER years when there was funding to support those purchases, and the recognition now that those dollars aren't there and those are significant expenses for school systems. So I say all that to say there is some conversation. Don't Can't say how serious it is and can't say how likely it is. But some conversation about the expectation that in the budget process here, the state would be pushed to provide some dollars specifically around the idea of assisting school districts to maintain their one-to-one configurations. Don't know how much that will be, and frankly, given our recent history, don't know if that will ever happen. But that's a different way of thinking about provision of technology for the state of North Carolina. And so I say that to say as the short session begins and that process begins to lay out, we'll be watching that and at the appropriate time, certainly be calling on all the members of our community to hopefully apply appropriate pressure to help that become something that happens. Mr. Teeter.
I would say that's exactly correct, that this is an item that we will have to run through the process as an expansion request, and it's something that we touch on in the upcoming presentation, and it's also something that's lifted up in previous conversations as a priority for Dr. Lewis. And in the context of the state, I'll echo what Dr. King has said, and the state has been a relatively absent partner where technology funding is concerned, and we only receive a few $100,000 per year in state technology funding. It's a drop in the bucket where this is concerned. And I know for a period of time, there was conversation about the state relinquishing some fines and forfeiture dollars that lived at the state level that was intended for technology. There was never really any closure with that at the state level that I'm aware of, and perhaps that will come back up in those short session conversations that Dr. King alluded to provide some support for technology in schools.
Okay, you said an expansion. Sorry, come back. I'm sorry. So you said this would be an expansion request for the county if no other resources come through. Um, and but what fund would it be from?
It would have to be local funds.
Yeah, would it be capital or would it be?
We're running it through as a local funding request.
So we also would have to share the expense of this with charters.
Right. So
So
as
it wouldn't be capital funding like they do in person.
Right. I mean, and we can have some conversations around our county's tolerance for that. And so if we would like to, when we formalize our request, if we would like to run that through and request the funding through capital outlay, I think it's a reasonable ask on our part, and we could certainly try to do that to mitigate the need to share that with charters.
Okay. And then the pricey is marked that this is for action. So, Mr. Teeter, if the board agrees to affirm this $4.6 million per year over the next 5 years, are we agreeing to $4.6 million expansion for this year's budget on technology?
That's a loaded question. I think, you're supporting a plan, and I think it provides a really clear charge for the superintendent and the finance officer to forge a way for that to make its way through the budget process. And I think that's as the board engages in the upcoming prioritization activities, I think that that's something that you'll have to contemplate as you balance your financial gives and takes in the coming weeks.
Okay, that's helpful. Dr. Lewis, this is marked for action for tonight.
Yes.
And so is the ask for us to take action tonight or to approve this to come on consent at the board meeting on the 26th?
Tonight, we're asking you to, if you recall, when we came to the board asking for additional purchase of devices, the board requested that we do a full deep dive into our one-to-one. So this is the model that we're presenting, and so we're asking you all to approve the model.
And not the dollar amount.
Yes.
The model,
So, I-
the
so,
model with the dollar amount or without
so,
the
we-
dollar
so,
amount?
so what we wanted to do was bring a model that the board had some indication of what would this model cost us. So again, when we were looking at what should one-to-one look like in Durham Public Schools, this is the model that we are comfortable with moving forward with. And in addition to this model, for example, K1 and 2, limited one-to-one, understanding that, for the most part, all students would need those devices. We wanted to give some kind of indication as it relates to what that model would cost, so that the board can feel comfortable moving forward with the model.
All right, that's helpful. I'm looking at policy 2235. Action at work sessions, action on operational services, policy, or academic student services topics at work sessions. Normally, we'd be limited to placing an item on a business meeting agenda for final action. Final action may be taken on any topic at a work session when necessary. So I'm listening for figuring out where that necessity comes to play right here.
So we can bring the asks back for the devices. And so I don't want the board to feel pressure that they're approving $4.6 million tonight. Really just the model that the board asked us to bring back.
Thank you.
So we're not pushed up against ordering devices or anything right now. We're good for the remainder of this school year.
Thank you. No, I was just looking for clarity. I don't know what the board's going to decide to do. I'm just asking for clarity. Thanks, y'all.
So I think Ms. Umstead has questions, but Ms. Chavez, is your question related to where that conversation was while we're here? Is that, yeah?
Yes, my question was basically just if we approve the model, what happens if we can't afford the model that we approve?
At risk of stepping in Mr. Teeter's lane, I think what we would do in that scenario is what we do at the end of every budget season, which is basically we take a look at what our ask was and what our priorities were, and make some decisions about how much of our priority we could afford. So certainly, I think if we found ourselves at $4.0 million that we could afford for technology at the end of the budget process, we would look to Paul and his team to advise us about what the best way to spend that $4 million was without essentially blowing up the model, with the expectation and understanding that we would need to and certainly want to go back and make adjustments to what we purchased in the coming years to get ourselves back on track with that model.
So Ms. Umstead, and then I have a few questions as well.
Yes, thank you all for bringing the presentation, doing that deep dive. I know the board's been asking for that for a while now. I'm gonna follow up a little bit on Ms. Aresha Rogers' question. So it sounds like there's not any funds already that have been allocated for or identified that they could be used for technology refresh currently without any expansion. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So I have a lot of concern about even moving forward, saying yes to one-to-one, knowing that we're talking about almost a $5 million commitment every year, and we've been in a shortfall for the last 2 years, right? Like that, just think the reality of the place that we're in right now feels a little uncomfortable to even say yes to move. And this is personally for me, to say yes to even moving forward with this model if we're going to put ourselves back in the hole. And so I think I would be interested in kind of getting also an understanding of, like, if we were to try to cut this in half to get a $2 million technology refresh every year, and that's, even could be ambitious, what would that include? If we had to prioritize, devices, bright links, the different things that are on that list, like how would we prioritize that as well? And I just want us to be completely understand the needs for students and the curriculum needs and the ideas, but I also want us to ground ourselves in some real realities about where our fiscal situation is. The state hasn't passed a budget, so I'm not holding my breath, unfortunately, on that. I hope that we do see more money for technology. I hope we can get that into our legislative priorities for this year. That's something that could also be lifted up to the School Board Association, which I think has been a part of some of their priorities, and we could talk about with our Durham delegation. But I guess I want us to be really thoughtful about this work that we're doing and continue to push us to think more creatively about, is one-to-one, even at a limited day or every school day, actually the model that we should be using. And so I don't want to downplay everything that's been presented, but I think I want us to think about maybe there's an option A and option B. Um,
Thank you, Chair Umstead. There's been a lot said here. I think I'm grounded in going back to when we had this conversation earlier and saying, I took some responsibility that I didn't, as a board member, push us to make a plan once these federal dollars were gone. And I sit with the notion that we asked y'all to do that and you brought it, and here we sit and we can't afford it. And the state board knows we can't afford it. They've included it in their legislative ask. Other districts are making some noise, but it's incredibly expensive. Can y'all talk a little bit about your evaluation of a lease versus purchase thing and what is covered in this lease? You said more breakage is covered, more warranty stuff is, and what's the life expectancy of a Chromebook? Because I also think of Chromebooks as $250, $300 devices, right? So what's the thinking and the plan for how long they would stay in rotation, and what's the lease term? It's a 5-year lease? Or we're not at that point yet because we haven't bid it out? Tell me.
Data, do you want to talk about the lease purchase appetite? Let's start with that, and then I'll talk about the Chromebook lifespan.
So I think generally, from a cash flow perspective, in favor of the lease model, right? So I think the outright purchase would require a tremendous upfront investment that I think, is even harder for us to digest than an annual lease payment for a few years. And I think, I don't want to speak for our partners at the county, but I think perhaps their appetite as well would be sort of more preferable to kind of soften that on the front end. It's just in past districts, have had success leasing both student and staff devices, and really have no reservations about sort of moving forward with that type of model. And I'll defer to my friend in IT about warranties and things of that nature.
So, Mr. Teeter, did the state give us anything even for staff devices?
I think it's really sort of our discretion, right, in terms of, so we have a limited pool of funds that come to us specifically to fund technology, and we also receive state funding for instructional supplies, so to speak. And so then we have to sort of look at what all of our needs are, and they don't necessarily come to us earmarked as explicitly for student device versus staff device. And so districts always have to sort of work to build that puzzle and figure out what piece do we tackle first, and where do we fund that from.
Thank you.
Just wanted to follow up on the lifespan of a Chromebook. If taken care of well, I think you can even last it 10 years. Google does accept updates to Chromebooks for up to 10 years. The current fleet of Chromebooks that we have is 6 years old. So I think depending on how you take care of your device, you can stretch it as much as possible. Right now, that stretch is the 9 to 10 years of which Google will provide updates. But as we all know, the wear and tear that the kids take them through, that's why we placed it around the 5 to 6 years. And of course, whether it's lease or purchase, that would include the warranties, unlimited accidental damage protection, and all those other kind of things. So yes, the cases and everything.
I appreciate it. And with the K2 going towards more limited device, more classroom devices in elementary school and middle school is what I'm seeing kind of in your model. Do we need more charging carts, or that expense that we incurred before and then didn't use? Do you have thoughts? Where are these things going to live in the classrooms to charge and
We
be
still have
maintained?
some schools that have some carts available to them, many of them, most of them. But to your question, to your thinking, to wondering, yes, would need some charging cards. The technology fee that we get from the state, the 300,000 perhaps that I've been seeing, yeah, those are some of the funds, or even the tech fees maybe. Those are some of the funds that will live to be for, but not every school does not have cards. Many of them do. So we'll just be complementing what they could have lost. But yeah, we still have many of those cards out there.
I look forward to just even more kind of robust engagement. I know at Meet and Confer, even on the Bright Links, staff might want to have more specific feedback to give you all. Did y'all hear that question about what they would use in a device and what they don't use? And I don't know if y'all have gotten to that part of engaging them on specific projector versus screen things. Y'all heard those questions as well as I did. But what we don't want to do is buy things that staff don't want to use.
Right, and that's the collaboration that we are engaging CNI on to make sure that if we go for an interactive display as this, it's what's exactly needed in the classroom. If it's an overkill, then we'll dial back. But yes, that's the engagement that would have going into the final purchase. And
So y'all said you were comfortable bringing this back to the board meeting. Are there specific things that you all need in addition? It was Chair Umstead's notion about different models, if we could only get half of the money, if we, those kind of things. Are there ways to proceed, or are you all kind of wanting this notion of seeing how we get through the budget? Tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah, and I would offer, and I'm looking at the team here, I would offer that we could venture to bring this back after we approve a budget, or right at, or simultaneously when we have a better picture of where we are, because Mr. Teeter did include technology in the expansion. So we have, we've been talking about, technology and from an expansion standpoint, but to see this 4.6 million, I know it probably hit a little different tonight. And so we're definitely, if that's okay, we probably can bring this back with the approval of the budget or right around that time. So in other words, when we have a better idea of what that technology number will look like, because we may have to maybe tweak the model.
Yeah, I think it was our vision to kind of do exactly what the board asked, which is to talk to our constituents, undergird ourselves in the best practice for teaching and learning and where we are in terms of our reliance upon technology, and bring forth a recommendation that kind of honored that. We're happy to bring back any derivatives that the board deems necessary.
I appreciate it. I saw Ms. Harold Goff, and I just also want to chime in on the very young learners, and hoping that we can engage our parent community, some of the pediatricians in the area and our staff on what best practices for screen time and screen usage are, so that as much as possible, we can help families be consistent at home. I do think that's a significant issue for the youngest of learners, and especially as we're teaching children to write and do a lot of manipulative fine motor skills as well. Ms. Harold Goff.
My brain went in another direction when you were talking about that. Oh, I was going to, when we were talking about, bringing it back, anything that comes up, I do feel like, as we're thinking about budget priorities, that this one is one that is very strong when we talk about centering student learning. And so this feels like they have brought what we asked for with, with an ideal for the one-to-one, what that could look like. I'm curious to know where this, how big a priority this is for administration when they're thinking about the budget, and what other priorities balance that. I'm not ready to say that we can't afford it. Because I don't, just like what they were mentioning before, they're going to go back and look at the fidelity of what we've been using. There might be things that we're spending money on that need to shift. And so I feel like depending on what our priorities are, that's what I'm really curious about is, where does it weigh in the budget next to other priorities that we have? and the fidelity of the assessment of what we've been using and how it's working. How does that all play into this decision we're about to make? So that's what I'm mostly concerned about. It's not a question of, I hear it, yeah, it's a lot of money, 4.6 million a year, but to me, it feels like one of the most important 4.6 million that we should be spending. So I just wanted to lift that up.
Mr. Tab, and then Ms. Carter Otten? Or vice versa?
Thank you. I'm just excited to see, we're talking about academics, and we have something in front of us that's going to deal directly with the academics of our students and the learning of our students. And so I'm definitely going to, will support, what you all have brought to us. And I know that Mr. Tito will work it out in the budget to make sure that this becomes a priority, because I do like the fact that we are talking about the academics of our students, and where this is landing should be really what we have been asking for, to making sure that we, get the technology in front of our students so that they can be great scholars, taking into consideration the screen time, all the other factors that come with that, and I'll be ready to support it. Thank you.
I recognize I might be alone at this because I haven't heard anybody else. Well, actually, maybe Chair Umstead was alluding to this also, but it does still feel strange to be, it feels like we need to better understand how we're going to be using devices for instructional purposes before we decide how many and what devices we're using. Like, it feels like we're putting the cart before the horse here. If you brought, the plan is beautiful in so many ways, you included so much information, but what I'm not seeing is, here's how we looked at all of the evidence about how devices should be used for learning to inform our plan to go one-to-one. I heard about budget, I heard about how we're already invested in tech and we use tech for these different things, but for me, we need that first. How are we following the guidelines? This is related to how much and how, K2 learn, users learn technology, how it gets integrated in the classroom. So how do we decide how many devices if we don't know that first? And again, maybe I just haven't heard it, but it's there. And I'm curious to know what other board members think about that, or if you'd rather say, yes, we want devices, and then we'll figure it out on the back end, how they're going to be used, or we're just going to assume it's going to be done.
So I think that one of the slides, perhaps I didn't go into a great detail or enough detail, but we have a over-reliance on technology for lots of things. If you recall the slides where I talked about the ecosystem. So in terms of assessments, our assessments are 100% contingent upon digital access. In terms of intervention resources, we're 100% in terms of digital access, in terms of intervention, and that's K-9. In terms of access to rigorous curriculum outside of the four walls of the schools, we're 100% contingent upon that using technology. Our curriculum resources, 100% relying on complement in terms of technology. So I think that what the board would love to hear is maybe more into the weeds and gravel of to what that looks like in implementation. But I tried to bring to you at a large scale to very much clearly articulate the reliance on teaching and learning as a complement to effective technology use. I'm more than happy to dig down into the minutes of the day and whatever you would need. However, I just want to be clear to the board, there is not a path forward without a dramatic change in the quality of teaching and learning, which will be belabored on our students and our faculty in order to change exactly how they've been doing business for the last 6 years by being one-to-one. And so that's what I kept mentioning, that runway. If that is a radical shift we would like to make, I'm absolutely going to support that decision from the board, but we want to give our teachers, our families, and our students the latitude to say, what will interventions look like now that we no longer have iReady with a one-to-one access for students? What does assessing our benchmarks with a quick turnaround so that teachers can use that data to respond to the teaching and learning needs, because those are digital assessments. So again, perhaps that's not quite in the weeds of what the board wants to hear. We're more than happy to bring that back. But without a radical change change into our philosophy on teaching and learning, technology is absolutely essential in how we've been doing business for the last 6 years. There'll be a radical shift to our staff and our students. I'm more than happy to entertain that on behalf of the board.
And I will just add, when we surveyed our teachers, 80% of our pre-K through fifth grade teachers were in favor of like the one-to-one device option. And when we surveyed our students, 95% of our students said, students that were surveyed said that the device helps them learn. And so when we couple that with, in terms of, and from an instructional standpoint, let me be crystal clear, there's no device on this earth that can replace an effective teacher. And what we know about our current curriculum resources and assessments is that they're on a digital platform. And so to ensure that our students are able to access those platforms, whether it's curriculum resources, supplemental materials, and then also the assessments that are given periodically, I think it causes us to really take a hard look at ensuring that the curriculum also helps drive this instruction as well. That's why I was happy that Ms. St. Mary kind of forecasted, where we're going to go with our curriculum over the next several years. So we think about students on devices, accessing the curriculum, supplemental resources, assessment, credit recovery at the high school level. I think we heard, loud and clear from our teachers in terms of what they want in terms of one-to-one. Very small percent mentioned the 1-to-3 or the 1-to-2. And so just knowing that in terms of this is what I need, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but this is what I need to be an effective teacher, is this one-to-one environment. If that makes sense. I know that didn't probably answer your question.
Just a comment on this. I think that I am most concerned with the K through 2. I heard in your presentation that you were going to be evaluating what was used, and this year would be used for that, and that you had a plan to I don't remember if you used the word develop guidelines, but
Guardrails.
guardrails.
Yep.
For use of technology. I do think time should be taken into account, but I think that the way you're framing it, probably if it's even not around time, will impact time, so that younger students would not be on the screen for every, subject, or something like that. So that's where, in hearing that, it gave me more confidence that you were going to develop something very thorough for the whole district. Because I think, as you commented on, teachers are using technology in different ways, which makes sense. Some teachers weren't, depending on when you got your training in being a teacher, you weren't even trained on how to use technology. Myself included. Maybe I was a little bit, but that was a long time ago. And so it's changed a lot, and then, like you said, some are more familiar with, whatever app to monitor their students and that kind of thing. And then we have beginning teachers and we have seasoned teachers, and it's very hard to be a beginning teacher and, monitor all your students while you're also learning maybe your content and everything. So anyway, I just think that I heard you say you were going to develop a plan to both add and take away. And so that's what gave me more confidence. But I would also be happy to hear more what that would look like, particularly for younger learners. So that is, that's kind of what I heard in it. But I would want to, be able to visit a school next year and see more, maybe that consistency across elementary schools, perhaps more than today. That's kind of my sense of it. But if the board supported having that more knowledge of the details, I wouldn't be opposed to that. So.
Thank you all. This has definitely been a robust conversation. I'm wondering if folks on Chair Umstead or Vice Chair Rogers have any other questions or insight into this as we look to wrap this conversation up.
We'll just ask. I know I kind of put out there plan B or second plan around with a lower cost point around devices, and I just didn't hear back from staff, so I didn't know if there was any feedback on that, if that was something we'd be looking at. And I asked that question around, I hear the need for devices and using them regularly in schools. And I'm with the tension that we don't, our budget constraints, what are they are, what are, what our budget constraints currently are. So if we're looking at that, how do we plan for, we know we're going to need these devices. We know testing time, everyone's going to need one. Like some of these things we know, and we might have a shortfall. So what's the plan to like manage through that as well? And so that's, I hear you all loud and clear. I know our system isn't perfect, and I'm grateful because we've been pushing on this plan for that. And I don't want us to recreate ourselves in this problem by saying we need 4.7 million and we only get 2 every year, and we never actually think through how we're going to maintain on a lower amount of money for device refreshes. So
Let me answer your question with a question to the team. If we did a lease purchase for 6 through 12, since I think that was our highest number of breakage and lost, we did a lease purchase for 6, 12, and then our current, how we have currently been operating for pre-K 5, would that be a significant savings?
Yes, it would. I just want to uplift the inequities that we've been in, we're trying to get out. And if any options that we bring take us a step back into where we've been, I just want to uplift that. If say like we go with the 6 through 12, K through 5 will have 7-year-old devices, 8-year-old devices. Where does that put us in terms of inequities? So yeah, yes, we can make it, whichever configuration, we can make it work. I think it was slide 4. It has shown you some years we bought 1,000 devices. Another year we bought 2,000 devices. That's what we'll be operating in. Because come June, I'll be running to Mr. Tita saying, what you got? And he'll say, hey, I have $1 million. And I'm like, okay, we'll buy 500. But yeah, it just puts us back in the same cycle of, next thing we'll start hearing parents of K through 5 saying, I'm paying my tech fee and I have an 8-year-old device. So we'll make it work, whichever configuration, because we've made it work in the past 5 years. So it just puts us back where we've been, and we'll keep on reacting and reacting to where the noise is coming from. And yeah, so yes, we can make it work, if I may answer that question, yes.
Yeah, that may be an option, but that actually isn't a great option.
Oh, and the
None of-
bright links will be 16
Yeah.
years old.
Yeah, I think it goes to the enormity of the state's responsibility to actually, I mean, if the state funded this, we wouldn't be having this conversation at all. We'd just be buying the devices, right? Just like textbooks or things that students need. It's like the world has shifted and the state budget has not caught up. Are
Yes,
you all
yes, ma'am.
comfortable with Chair Rogers? Is that, or Vice Chair Rogers, is that you?
Yeah.
Yep, what you got?
So my question was going to be, is it possible to get this brought to us um like at a work session for the options like Chair Umstead has asked, and then for final approval at a board meeting?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. Like I just want to make sure that we will have an opportunity to have further discussion and then be ready to move to approval. Because I too am interested in supporting this ask and understand the importance of it, but yeah.
We will certainly stand ready to bring this item back in whatever form the board directs, at whatever time.
And I imagine this will come back up in the budget agenda item we're getting ready to dig into on the budget. So if the board is all right with leaving this as an information item with all the discussion we've had? And knowing that there will be more questions and answers forthcoming. We are so appreciative, Mr. Majumbi, of all of y'all's work. Ms. Sidbury, thank you so much for all the detail you put into this catch-up plan.
Ms. Byer, the Precies has it marked for action. Is the attorney there able to say if we need to table it or?
Yeah, my box is, my Precies is checked information and action, so I was going with where we landed, but yeah, he's here.
I think because it's marked for action, also tabling it is the cleanest option tonight.
I would welcome that from colleagues then. And
Chair,
then,
Chair Member Byer, could you be clear for us in administration exactly what we're bringing back and exactly when we're bringing those items back?
let me see what Dr. King says.
Yeah, I think we'll just wait for the superintendent and the board leadership to advise us about that.
So I would make a motion to table the technology update plan for a later work session as recommended by the superintendent, and for an action item to come at a board meeting following the conversation at the work session, a work session.
Second.
It's been moved by Vice Chair Rogers and seconded by Ms. Chavez that we table this technology update for this evening, refer it to a future work session. Any further discussion? Not, Chair Umstead?
This is Bettina Umstead. I vote aye.
Vice Chair Rogers?
Millicent Rogers, I vote aye.
Mr. Tab, I vote aye.
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 I vote aye as well. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you all so very much. Brings us to administration's update on the 26-27 budget development update. Thank you, Mr. Teeter, for saving the best for last.
Okay, good evening, board members and Dr. Lewis. So thank you, IT, for doing that presentation. Certainly another exciting budget season with some things hanging in the wings that are of great interest to a lot of folks. It's okay if we can advance to the next slide. And so just want to sort of start off with variables that we are contemplating in finance department and with the budget team about things that we need to account for and things that we need to plan for as we move forward to build Dr. Lewis's recommended budget. And so one, I will not belabor enrollment too much and the implications that enrollment has on our funding because we have talked about that for quite a few meetings. But just as a reminder, the state of North Carolina will adjust our funding next year to reflect the declined enrollment. They used to make these changes mid-year, and in the process of making those changes mid-year, they would cut the impact in half to sort of compensate for the adjustments happening midstream. So now that they deal with that in arrears, we assume the full loss is sort of in the year ahead. If we end up outperforming what that declined enrollment was, they will make adjustments to give us some money back. So they really do. They've really worked with us over the years in taking feedback to try to make the process where we can plan as best as possible to manage loss, but also recognize immediate impact in the event that we gained. And so, I will thank them every time I can for having made that change because it is not fun to make adjustments in November and December. As you can see, we have a number of buckets of state funding, right? And so we're in our efforts to be increasingly transparent and to educate. We're lifting up just more granular level detail with these things. And so we've spent some time evaluating funding formulas from the state of North Carolina to assess how they might adjust us. And so you can see a little over $7.2 million of impact to some of our state allotments. And those allotments vary in how they're administered. Some of them come to us in the form of positions. And so just like that very first category where we talk about classroom teachers as an example. So when they fund us for positions, no matter how expensive that teacher is in terms of their state-based pay, the state will pick up that full cost if we pay them from that allotment. And so we've naturally, as a priority, we fund our more veteran teachers, our teachers with advanced degrees from this type of funding stream because the state assumes that full cost and it helps us strategically from a budget. You'll see some items in here that are addressed as dollar allotments. And so those are just simply buckets of dollars that are finite. And regardless of how expensive something is, we have to make it fit as best as we can before moving on to other funding sources. So naturally, we love position allotments, and they have been a way of business for quite some time. And we advocate quite regularly to keep those, as sometimes it is a question of whether or not the concept of position allotments will continue in North Carolina. We're one of the few states that are still doing that. Some others you'll see referred to as MOE allotment, and so they allot these items in terms of months of employment versus just saying, hey, we're identifying this as whole positions. But we're appropriate for items that are not position allotments. We've tried to quantify the number of positions that might mean. So teacher assistants, a little closer to the bottom quarter here, is a good example of that. It is a dollar allotment that we receive from the state. A reduction of in that nature would equal about 12 teacher assistants or instructional assistants. A number of these allotments will naturally adjust, or we will naturally react to these in the course of our business in Durham. Less students, less teachers based on our funding formulas. And so we can address a lot of this just through good business and our existing practices. Items that I have lifted up in yellow are items that don't always necessarily react to our student population changing. And so these are ones that I'm particularly focused on. And I call up some totals around that later in the presentation, but they're things that we're having to contemplate as a team of how do we react to some of these things that are not tied to formulas. As an example, I'll look at the third row that is our non-instructional support, right? So this funds a good number of clerical positions in the district, such as school treasurers, data managers, clerical support even in this facility. And so those are things that are part of our fixed cost per se. So every school has a school treasurer. And so when enrollment goes down at a school, we do not necessarily eliminate the clerical staff that's at that school. But our funding in that category will come down, and we have to contemplate how do we absorb that as we work through this budget process. So more to come on that slide. On the next slide, this is just really sort of a framing slide or a conversation framing, and we in the upcoming presentations will articulate some more additional historical data on this in a sort of a chart format, but just sort of lifting up the conversation of per pupil funding in Durham. Just want to make sure that as we enter this season, we're reminding our funding body and our partners at the county that we are responsible for funding charter school children in Durham. And so that when we calculate per pupil funding from county government, we also must include our charter school students because we are passing along those dollars. And so sometimes the conversation, I think, has been just solely focused on our enrollment at Durham Public Schools and how those dollars follow. But I also want to lift up those charter school students and the impact that it has on per pupil funding so that we have an appropriate framing on that conversation with things that are going on in our climate right now with enrollment in charter schools. We can advance 2 more slides. And so just lifting up conversation around continuation costs. And so as a reminder, we generally break our budget out into two very broad categories, the notion of continuation and expansion, with continuation being measures where we need more money in order to operate as we are. I've spent quite a bit of time sort of speaking to our different groups who have offered us input and to remind them that there are entities that are always seeking more money from everyone, and to include insurance carriers and utility services. And so we hear that in the news quite frequently as property insurance carriers, auto insurance carriers are always going to our commissioner of insurance to seek some sort of change or an increase in how much they can charge for coverages. And that's been particularly noteworthy in North Carolina just due to hurricanes and other natural disasters that have hit us from the east and the west in the past couple of years that affect the property insurance market. Utilities, you see that in the news as well. Our utility rate commission is always being solicited for increases, and so Duke Energy in particular is pursuing a 15% increase in electric rates, and so that's something we have to take very seriously. So we've provided some costs on those two categories. So $737,000 and some change for various commercial insurance coverages, not to be confused with our staff's health insurance. And then a little over 1.1, almost 1.2 million that we want to make sure we're holding aside to properly plan for potential increases in utilities and waste service. The next slide is certainly always one that's more exciting. And normally at this point in time, we would be talking about year two of a 2-year state budget. So we don't even really have a year one. And so there's normally a little less guesswork in trying to anticipate what next year might look like from a state perspective. And so my colleagues across the state and I find ourselves trying to anticipate what might the General Assembly do in tandem with the governor for next school year. And I think we will know increasingly more as we have additional sessions coming forward, right? So there are a few dates in the coming months where they will convene. And so myself and a number of my colleagues are planning budgetarily for the potential for a 5% raise from the state level and needing to contemplate what those costs are. We know that with the exception of 1 year in my career, that the retirement contribution rate increases. And so as a reminder for folks, our employees who are eligible to participate in the retirement system, meaning they're 75% employed, so working at least 30 hours a week or more, contribute 6% out of each paycheck to the retirement system. And then as the employer, we contribute a relatively healthy percentage as prescribed with negotiations between the state treasurer and the General Assembly. And so we are preparing for an increase there. We are also preparing for an increase in the health insurance rate. And so in the scope of my career, and the largest increase that we've seen in a given year has been $600 per year that we contribute per employee for that coverage. We certainly know there's been a tremendous amount of conversation around what employees contribute. Those amounts have changed for the first time in a number of years. They were pretty flat and predictable for quite some time. And the new state treasurer and the state health plan board have implemented this new sliding scale model that has created higher contributions for our employees, and some higher than others now, depending upon how much they earn in salary. So nonetheless, we still anticipate our contributions will move to support that plan. And so in that space, really looking at a little over $6.1 million that we must contemplate in our planning to sort of lift that up in the framework of the implications for the minimum wage in Durham Public Schools. As a reminder, we're currently at $17.51 for our lowest paid employees in the district. And an action of that nature from the state would shift our minimum wage in Durham Public Schools to $18.39 per hour, just to provide some context there. On the next slide, I will kind of sit on this for a minute just to talk a little bit about what we're doing this year and how we're moving forward. And so as we've had conversations about the expansion phase of the budget in the past, it has been sort of the practice that we have only brought forward in a public way items that the superintendent and his team have already vetted and have determined, like, yes, we want to move forward with those. And so we've made an effort in this presentation to lift up all of the requests that have come through to us and attach dollar values to those, so folks know that what we were asked for as we went through the process. Our goal at the next meeting is to bring to you sort of a smaller list of things that are more that hug very closely to Dr. Lewis's priorities, as well as items that we can very carefully align with the strategic plan. And so we will have sort of comments or ratings on that in terms of how does this fit into the strategic plan, and how do these align with the superintendent's priorities rolling forward. So just wanted to kind of address that change. And I'm not going to touch on all of those slides. There are many. And so we'll lift out a couple that feel particularly pertinent as we evaluate the requests that we have. If we can cue to the next slide. Just spent some time on this. And so really sort of talking about investment in technology. And so we have two items in particular that have come through as expansion requests. So one, we heard conversation around the BrightLink devices and what sort of interactive panel solution might we move forward with. And so we're looking at the potential for a $900,000 lease there to refresh or put in a new solution. And then also the need to refresh 25,000 student devices and the desire to manage that with an annual lease with a potential cost of $2.8 million per year. Yes.
Sorry. Do you know the discrepancy between the presentation we just saw, the 4.6 million, and this 3.8? Or is it just we're in formative early
So we are in sort of formative stages, right? And so I'm working on, so this slide, I'm working from specific dollar amounts that we received as an expansion request from IT. And so as we roll forward with the prioritization activities for the board, I think we heard some very valid questions about what might this look like in a smaller model. And so we'll work very carefully with the IT team to lift up what some of those tiers might be. And so if this was just a 612, if this was a K5 only, so on and so forth, we'll make sure the board has that information as we ask you to work with us to prioritize how we might move forward.
This model did not include teacher devices either, right?
These are explicitly student devices, yes. And I'm under the impression, thank you for lifting that up, Dr. Lewis. And so we did ask, I did ask the question of the IT team, you know, if, let's say, for example, we were able to successfully secure the funding for student devices this year, what kind of urgency are we under with staff devices? And I'm under the impression that we can continue as we are through next year with staff devices as they are, and that's the student devices appear to be a priority when compared to staff devices, and so that may inform why we've got this specific expansion request that we did through finances process. So thank you. IT team that's manning the slides, I think we are ready if we can move to number 18. And so that's a space where we want to kind of spend some time talking about some pertinent items. So and it will be the one specific to the finance department when we get to number 18. I want to talk about some things there. So as the board is aware, and as we have had conversations through the meet and confer process, we've had quite a few questions about biweekly pay and the ability to administer that. And we are underway with a survey. So the last week of January, Public Affairs worked with us to push out a survey to gauge classified staff interest in biweekly pay. And so just in doing so, mirroring practices from our other districts that have explored this, and then also working hard through that survey to communicate other implications that may come with that shift so that our staff has the best information possible. So before we wrap up Dr. Lewis's recommended budget, that survey will have closed, and we'll have some good data to understand how many classified employees are looking for biweekly pay, even bi-monthly pay. We listed that as an option as well in the survey. And then we'll have an opportunity to see if there are any trends with particular types of employees, right? So is there a desire among bus drivers in particular to transition from bi-monthly to bi-weekly to avoid some of the 3-week gaps that they see occasionally in the payroll calendar? Do we see a particular demand for our before and after care employees as an example? So these are things that we'll look at. This first line item in the finance request just reflects the most expensive model of if we needed to fully operationalize biweekly pay for all classified staff. And I expect that this number will come down as we align that with the reality of what groups are most likely going to want that biweekly pay. And I may only have the need to add an additional payroll tech versus adding 3 or 4 additional staff members to support that. So this is live and developing, like a number of things. Occupational therapy and physical therapy is a group that we have. We wanted to lift up sort of at this stage ahead of the next stage in the process, just in that we have had a lot of feedback where that's concerned, and we also recognize the alignment with student health and student safety where those practitioners are concerned. And so looking at a model that is more closely aligned with how we compensate other related service providers in the district, such as speech, psychology, audiology, and trying to really look at those folks in the same way. Those other related service providers are viewed as certified employees by the state of North Carolina. Our occupational and physical therapists are viewed as classified employees, and that is something that has changed. It's moved back and forth a little bit over time in North Carolina, and so looking at a model, so some of our other districts that we looked at treat OTs and PTs similarly to their other related service providers, and so that cost to make that change would be a little bit shy of $270,000. So just wanted to lift that up. Safety assistance is another space where we've had some conversation with the meet and confer process. And so I know that the desire there was for their monthly supplement to mirror the bus driver supplement that was put into place for this school year. And so at this point in time, we're looking at a model where they're not quite as much as a bus driver, just due to the additional requirements that exist for bus drivers, looking to sort of temper that approach a little bit. And so looking at a cost of $86,658 if we were to offer that $100 supplement for safety assistance. So just some items there that I wanted to pause on because they're pertinent to other conversations that we've had with the meet and confer process and advocacy that we've had here in the boardroom for your awareness. So IT group, I'm ready to advance to number 25 in the slide deck to touch on those items. And so charter schools. And so we carry a tremendous responsibility, as we shared earlier, to ensure that local dollars follow those students on a per pupil basis. And in our work to plan for the new year ahead, we are aware of 2 new charter schools that will open within the geographical boundaries of Durham County in August of 2026. One of them is not necessarily a new school, but it is an additional campus for an existing school. So the original campus is in Apex, where we already send a few students from Durham County, but they have purchased an office building in the southern part of the county in the vicinity of Lowe's Grove and some of our other schools. And they are planning to open with K-5 next school year with about 100 students per grade level. So anticipating an exposure of 600 Durham County students going there. We won't know exactly how many until we know, but want to plan for that. There is another charter school that we are bracing for that would start with approximately 400 students in their first year. And so obviously monitoring that very carefully. So looking at a potential issue of 1,000 students there. So we are certainly sensitive to that after the year that we've had this year in managing enrollment concerns. And I will share that our school planning team has started the early stages of enrollment forecasting. And so this weekend, we saw the first version of that enrollment forecasting. By the time we are back in front of you, we will have another more refined version, and I'll be lining up that enrollment forecast from our school planning team with this information to make sure we're in alignment, and we're pretty close at this point. And so I just want to lift up that if we see that shift of enrollment, we're looking at a situation where 26% of the public school enrollment in the county would be in charters. And so that would represent 6.6 million or so dollars of our current year local funding that we would need to plan to pass along and expand that line item at the detriment of some other line items in our budget. So just wanted you to know where we are with that in the process. On the next slide, sort of lift up a summary of activities here, just in terms of the continuation costs, right? So potential for a little over 8 million. We know that any funding that we get for continuation, we need to net that amount of money, and so we've had to apply what the charter share would be on top. So we would need to request a little over 10.8 million to make continuation work. The expansion requests that we received are just that. They are requests. We're vetting them. And so we know we'll work very carefully with the superintendent to craft a recommended budget that reflects our utmost priorities. And so those requests are a little over 15.4. Same process with applying the charter layer to that. We've lifted up the charter school growth here in this chart and lifted up the state allotments that will potentially shift downward that don't hug very closely to our existing allotment formulas that are triggered to enrollment changes. And so you can see managing a large dollar number there for our planning. And so we are working hard with our prioritization processes to call what could be a palatable request to bring forward. Just want to note here also, it's a good time to sort of pause and think about. I know classified pay is a priority, has always been a priority for the board. It's certainly a priority for Dr. Lewis that we've lifted up in previous conversations. And so at the most recent meet and confer meeting that was this past Thursday, the Educator Association lifted up sort of their proposal for what classified pay might look like in the district next year. And lifting up a model that next year would recommend a $22 per hour minimum wage, and then increasing the progression between steps on our salary schedule by an additional 0.25%. So we currently see a 0.5% progression, and so they'd be looking to see 0.75% progression in between steps with that proposal. And so worked with the budget team after that meeting to apply a cost to that. And so we're looking at that, implementing that model, excluding administration, which I don't endorse, but that the model as proposed would be 29.5 million to operationalize. And so we also think about, as a work with Dr. Lewis, to think about sort of how we move forward, right? We'll be looking at some other angles of how we might address classified pay, right? So we think about, as you saw in the continuation slide, we discussed the potential for a 5% state raise. And I do, after the year that we've had in the absence of a state budget, I echo DAE's concerns about pinning the hopes of a classified pay raise on action or inaction from the state of North Carolina. And so we may contemplate a model where what would it cost for us to achieve that 5% raise for classified pay absent state action, right? And so that will be a model that we will lift forward to give folks an opportunity to contemplate. And really just sort of thinking about our desire to reach the 1922 figure at the county level. It could take a couple of years of investing a little over 5 million a year in each of those years to get to that point. And so it's not lost on us that we need a plan for it and work towards it. And we want to be partners in moving forward classified pay. And I say that as someone who depends exclusively on a fleet of classified employees in order to do my work. And so we recognize that very much so. So was really not able to lift that up in our slides because that meeting happened Thursday evening, but wanted to just provide the board an update that we looked at it right away and explored that cost. And we'll have more conversation about it, and we will lift it up as in the menu of options as we develop the budget prioritization tool for this cycle. And we'll continue to talk about that. But I would be remiss if I just did not reflect sort of the reality that all of our counties are grappling with, and just sort of managing expectations that we know we wouldn't get $39 million if we asked for that, right? And it's greater than the very generous funding requests that we've received over the past couple of years. And so looking forward to hearing sort of continued updates from our partners at the county, and just really want to manage expectations that we come forward with a very tight and very very well vetted request rolling forward with them. And so I know that they're challenging their departments at the county level to think very hard about their priorities. Extra duty, a couple of slides forward, we're having some conversations through the meet and confer process about how we examine extra duty. When do we call something an extra duty? When do we call it a stipend? And what are some things that we need to standardize in Durham, right? And so we know our athletics and our performing arts are spaces where we've got standardization. There are schedules. Folks know what's involved. Tech Champions is another category that in partnership with IT where we pay funds. And so at the meet and confer meeting on Thursday, our educators lifted up some specific areas that they want us to look at or some specific duties that they'd like us to look at, and we're committed to doing that. And for the next meet and confer meeting, and as well as lifting up some thoughts around that for the next budget conversation. Our principals that are members of the committee sort of lifted up some inequities that might exist across schools. Some of them have the ability to offer extra duty pay for some items where others may not. And so we've gotten some advocacy in that space about how can we further press in from the central office level to help standardize areas where the need for a particular extra duty is pronounced throughout the district. So just wanted to lift that up as well as another space. On the next slide, we think about next steps. And so there are some updates that we want to lift up after Dr. Lewis and I conversed with board leadership on Friday afternoon, I believe it was. And so the first two line items are a check. And then February 19th, we have our next round of meet and confer. February 23rd is the budget town hall, where we will provide even more granular information than you saw in this presentation today about where our funding comes from, how have we used it, and what are our options rolling forward. And so we will be pushing out a communication on that very shortly with the details of the location, time, and we'll have very aggressive communication on that. So folks know what to expect with that, but just prepare for lots of information. The board meeting on the 26th, we've got sort of a draft one of Dr. Lewis's recommended budget where we'll lift up items that we have vetted and we're prepared to receive feedback. I think in terms of when we might actually have a public hearing that's a separate function from the town hall. Board leadership lifted up a couple of dates for us to consider, and I think we may need a doodle poll for the board in terms of what might be preferable. So March 5th and March 12th were 2 days in particular that were lifted up in that conversation Friday afternoon as areas where you all will receive a poll to help us sort of pin down an explicit meeting date that is just truly a hearing versus a sit and get of information from me. So excited to get that on the books. And then we would have that, obviously, both of those dates are ahead of the March 26th meeting where we would sort of press and hope for an authorization for our request to the county. We know it may spill past that. Last year, it was in early April that happened. And so we're going to work with you, engage you, and see where you are, and give you all the information and tools you need to make you feel comfortable with what we ultimately ask for. So, so just know I'm not being overly aggressive with March 26th, but we are going to work as hard as we can to get you as comfortable as we can by that date. And so with that, I know that there are many, many questions, and happy to start answering those.
Thank you, Mr. Teeter. I can't even imagine all the work that you and your team have been doing to get us to this point. Mr. Tab.
Thank you very much. This is just for a clarifying question for the people that are watching. Can you explain again, in a nutshell, the difference between the $4 million+ that IT presented and the numbers that you presented, so that people will be clear at home, because there are some questions about
Yes.
What they presented and what you are presenting?
Yes. So the numbers that we presented were specific expansion requests that we received for interactive panels in classrooms and student devices. And then the staff presentation this evening from IT also included employee devices. And so we're working with them to sort of balance that of potentially prioritizing student devices next year, and then staff devices to come up in a future refresh. And so I think they're working really hard to do their job to give us 5 years of planning and lifting up 5 years worth of needs. And then we're working with them on the flip side to help manage what can we possibly do in year one of that, and then what can wait for year two in terms of financial resources.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tab. Questions and feedback? I can go to the screen, folks, or I can start here. Screen folks, let's see from the screen. Vice Chair Rogers, Chair Umstead, you all have questions?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
You? Chair Umstead?
Thank you. I don't have any questions either. I appreciated, Mr. Teeter, you kind of framing how you were thinking about these requests. And there's more work to do to streamline and prioritize them. So I just appreciate that information, and look forward to hearing more from you all in a couple weeks.
Thank you. Other folks at the table? Ms. Harold Goff says no. Ms. Chavez?
Thank you. My question is about the supplements. These are existing scales, correct? These are already in place. They've been in place. Why do some people make more than others? Is it based on hours? Are we paying differently, like based on sport? Or, I mean, that's what it looks like, but I didn't want to assume.
Yes.
Is it actually harder to do some jobs than others?
Yeah.
Like cheerleading coaches?
Yeah. So I'm not the most athletic person in the world, but I would just share just historically from my time as a finance officer paying these supplements, that it is, I have often seen, those align with particular sports, and in particular sports that generate revenue. Right. And so I think it's not uncommon to see football and basketball to be rather robust when compared to other things like tennis or swimming or some other sport, right? But that's pretty common practice across districts over time. So understand why you're asking that question. So it's yeah.
Well, I mean, it brings up for me a gender disparity. I mean, to see cheerleading versus football. I get the thing about, revenue generating, but we also, I mean, what do we value? You know? So I'm not sure what else to say about that right now, but I'm just wondering about the equity in this, and then also with the performing arts. Um, is it based on hours, or is it why do high school, you know, band directors make so much more? Is it that they put in more hours, or it's harder, they have more students versus, middle school band? But again, I'm wondering about disparities or equity across these scales. So it leaves me with questions.
And Mr. Teeter, you didn't develop these, you just found them here in Durham.
These are
Because
existing, right,
yeah.
correct. And I think just like, I'll echo like what Ms. Chavez said, right? These are existing ones and as a part of as a part of the expansion request we have received, there's desires for us to re-examine these. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Your tab looked like he had some.
Yeah, I
follow-up.
respond, thank you. You brought up some excellent points, because this is something that we've worked on in Durham Public Schools forever and ever, because it's gonna always be evolving. But to answer your questions, for example, for band, if we look at programming, so band was doing stuff, they had more events that they would go to. And so therefore it required more time that they were spending. So that's a little easier way to just break it down of how it was decided. But a lot of time it was about programming and what was included within your program, how many games you had to do, those types of things. Okay, but I'll be glad to work on anything to help you. We get to where we need to be with that for all the extra duty. Thank you.
Any other questions before I jump in with mine? I just want to appreciate all the work you've done, the work on getting the audit on time and all the things that are represented in those documents. I want to appreciate your leadership. On slide, I don't know, the 26 or something slide, the bottom line where we get to 39 million. Typically at this time, we also would have a capital chunk, because we cannot sit here, Mr. Barnes cannot sit here and not have enough money to keep fixing HVACs. And I remember we had 6 million, we finally got to 6 million annually from the county. Then we got a little bit extra last year that we were supposed to try to do as much as we could with. Do you have any feedback on where we are with that? How desperate we are for getting that line item in?
Yes.
As well?
Yes, and so I think that's accurate that it's obvious when I came to Durham that there was a lot of effort to move that figure to the 6 million mark. Last, I guess, 2 cycles ago, right, the county allotted us some of their ARPA dollars to assist with some targeted needs in the district. And then for the year that we're in now, our typical annual capital outlay contribution from them did walk back to that 5 number as they sort of grappled how to make that work. And so we have tried for a couple of cycles to get to 8 million. in terms of the recurring capital outlay funding from the county, and we are very likely to stay that course in that continued advocacy to get that investment up to that level. And so I think in the upcoming presentation, you're likely to see us advocate once again to continue that progress and work towards the 8 million mark.
Thank you. I continue to share your concern about the living wage and desiring for us to, at least as public entities, match and align. So as the city has moved well beyond us, the county has got leapfrogged on ahead. I hope that models that you all might bring would have us at least starting at 1850, 1875, 19 something that actually addresses our starting wage workers in a pretty aggressive way, in ways that we can also address that compression, which is the impossible thing we were trying to do when we got into this pay crisis. So I don't know how much we can stretch this ask and how much the county might be willing to partner with us on behalf of our folks. I want to reiterate, I think we still only get 15 an hour from the state, right? Is that the state minimum wage? They haven't gone above for
Cor-
schools.
Correct, right. So the state minimum wage remains 15, and that is sort of the, and the maxes certainly go beyond that, but that 15 minimum wage from the state is sort of the foundation for their schedules.
Yeah. And I appreciate you costing out the beginning of the DAE model and their proposal being $29.5 million. If I'm recalling correctly, it's a 2-year model they have. It's based on a 25% raise for starting and jumping those steps and essentially making a steeper line. I'm concerned about the feasibility of that and want to be honest with folks about that, but also I understand how expensive it is to live in this community with wages that are not keeping up with the market around us. And so I look forward to y'all kind of bringing your best wisdom on how we can do that and how we can lift folks up. I also going to speak explicitly to what you spoke of. We can't freeze someone's salary if the state gives a raise to a category of employees. And I would never recommend doing that. I mean, I see the equity lens that they have come out with that, but
The two words I use, and I prepared the interpreter tonight, right, is arbitrary and capricious, to make that, to implement a notion of that. And I understand, I guess I understand the thought, right, that administration is generally compensated well, compared to, but, we're just as a practice, we don't exclude groups when we make those kinds of changes. And so, yeah, thank you for lifting that up.
and then on the slide number, sorry, where you estimated the compensation as a $6 million increase if the state gave a 5% raise. I just want to give you the chance to be as explicit as possible that those are additional local cost in that model. That's not, we're getting $6 million from the state for you, but this is actual increase that our local expenses would go up to
Correct.
cover that.
Correct, right. So this is the local implication that we would need to identify funding for to take care of our locally funded employees in the event that the state did raise pay and benefit rates in that way. And so I'll go back to my arbitrary and capricious words again of we can't omit our locally funded employees when the state takes that kind of action. And so we're planning for our local responsibilities in the event that these circumstances change from a state action. Yep.
And then will you all in cabinet be using some of the modeling like last year to kind of force these impossible decisions and bring something forward? Is that how y'all are thinking about? Yeah.
That is my week's work. So now we're moving into the now that we've provided some costs on some recommendations through Meet and Confer, And we've had this technology conversation. We've got quite a bit of options to feed into the spreadsheet tool that the board saw last year. And I've worked with my team to sort of thinking about that scale, thinking about the offsets. And so my brain sort of always operates, okay, if we do all these things and then we pretend that, well, what if no new money? What would you do? And what of these things are still a high priority for you, even if you don't receive additional money? And what are you willing to balance out in the absence of that additional revenue, right? And so those are our two tools that we have, is to ask someone else for money. And I think Indy Weekly hit on that very well recently of, do we have to ask someone else for more money, or we have to trim back existing expenses, and those are our two tools. And so I always think about that scenario of, what would we do if no new money? And so we've started thinking creatively about options that we lift up that can be contemplated of, is this something we would consider not doing? And how much would we save if we didn't do that thing rolling forward, right? And so I think we have to think that way and be prepared to think that way, and not think that way in May or June. And so we're looking forward between now and the next meeting of this body of having tools in your hands so that you can start interacting and thinking in that way with us.
Thank you so very much. Any other questions before we move forward? The item is an information item, and we are so appreciative. And you didn't need us to take action on anything of the other attachments. For bringing that, we have, for information only, the overnight international field trip information and the grants, gifts, and donations. Otherwise, that would move us to summary of follow-up items. And Dr. Pittman, is that? Thank you.
All right. So for our follow-up items around the summer programs, in April, we will bring the proposed budget for each of the summer programs, specifically what programs are covered by parent fees, the per pupil spending, some of the demographics, including SES, and that format would be through our superintendent's weekly update. Also, determining the effectiveness of the metrics that are helping us determine the programming and how well students are doing. In June of 2026, slated right now at a work session, we would bring information about how many students are enrolled preliminarily in each of the summer programs by demographic data, including race, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status, ESL, EC, and AIG, and how many staff are projected to be enrolled in what positions for the summer programming. And then at the back to school update in September, information would be provided about how many students completed the summer programming, particularly comparing those that started, metrics with outcomes for each of the programs, the final budget with actual expenses, and again, the per pupil spending by program. For the technology update, there was a motion that no action was taken, rather that the technology update plan would be referred to a future work session and action item on a subsequent board meeting following that work session. For the budget development, there was a wondering about the differences of stipends or supplements, and we just captured that as a potential piece of information to continue to work to unpack. And models for compensation that address the starting wage workers aggressively and also that address compression. That concludes our summary.
Thank you. Anything else that folks noted that you needed to add to that already extensive list? We appreciate our team and y'all's leadership every day. If not, I would accept a motion to go into closed session.
Move that we go into closed session for the reasons stated on the agenda.
Aye.
Been moved by Ms. Carter Ott. And I seconded by Mr. Tab. Excellent. That we go into closed session for the reasons stated on the agenda. Chair Umstead,
This is Bettina Umstead. I vote aye.
Vice Chair Rogers,
Millicent Rogers, and I vote aye.
Mr. Tab, I vote aye.
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 Aye. And passes unanimously. We are in closed session. Just a reminder, we will not be back to stream afterwards. Good night.